When a billionaire CEO calls her lowest level employee at midnight, something has shattered beyond repair. Victoria Hale built an empire. She commanded boardrooms. She made grown men nervous with a single glance. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, she sat on cold stone steps, abandoned by the one person who promised forever, with nowhere to turn except to a man she barely knew. A single father working two jobs just to survive. What happened in the next 12 hours would break every rule, cross every line, and prove that power means absolutely nothing when you're falling apart. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. Daniel Cross was 3 pages into reading Where the Wild Things Are for the second time that night when his daughter finally drifted off. Emma's small fingers had been clutching his shirt, her 7-year-old anxiety about the upcoming school week making sleep impossible until Daddy's voice smoothed away her worries. He'd perfected this routine over 3 years of solo parenting. The gentle voice, the patient repetition, the willingness to read the same story until his throat went dry. He'd just set the book on her nightstand when his phone vibrated against the kitchen counter. The number wasn't saved, but Daniel recognized the area code. Corporate. His stomach tightened reflexively. Nothing good came from work calls at midnight. He answered on the third ring, keeping his voice low as he stepped into the hallway and pulled Emma's door nearly closed. "Hello? Mr. Cross?" The voice was female, clipped, professional, despite the late hour. "This is Jennifer Caldwell, Ms. Hale's executive assistant." Daniel's mind went blank for a moment. Ms. Hale. Victoria Hale? The CEO of Hale Industries. The woman whose name appeared on his paychecks, whose face graced the covers of Fortune and Forbes, whose existence operated in a stratosphere so far above his pay grade that he'd seen her in person exactly twice in 18 months of employment. Yes? He tried to shake the confusion from his voice. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause. In that silence, Daniel heard something he'd never expected from someone in Jennifer Caldwell's position. Uncertainty. "Mr. Cross, I'm going to be direct because we don't have time for protocol." Her words came faster now. "Miss Hale hasn't responded to any communication since 4 o'clock this afternoon. Her security detail is in Los Angeles with her at a conference, or they're supposed to be, but she never boarded the flight." Her phone goes straight to voicemail. The board is concerned. Daniel walked to his living room window, looking out at the quiet street below. A few porch lights, empty sidewalks. The ordinary stillness of a Tuesday night in a working-class neighborhood where people woke up early and went to bed earlier. "I'm sorry, Ms. Caldwell, but I'm not sure why you're calling me." "Because according to HR records, you're the only employee who lives within 15 miles of her primary residence." She exhaled sharply. "I know this is irregular. I know you work in facilities management. I know this isn't your job. But something is wrong, Mr. Cross. And you're the closest person we have." Daniel's free hand found the back of his couch. Facilities management. That was a generous way to describe his position. He fixed broken lights, scheduled HVAC repairs, and made sure the executive floor always had fresh coffee. He was invisible by design, a ghost who kept the building running while people like Victoria Hale made decisions that moved markets. "You want me to check on her?" "I'm asking you to drive to her address, confirm she's safe, and report back, that's all." Jennifer's voice softened slightly. "I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. Her husband hasn't answered either, and I can't dispatch emergency services based on a few missed calls. But between you and me, Mr. Cross, Victoria Hale doesn't miss calls. She doesn't go silent. Ever." Daniel thought about Emma sleeping 30 feet away. Thought about the alarm set for 5:30 a.m. so he could get her to before-school care and make it to his first job by 7. Thought about how badly he needed this job, both of them actually, and how saying no to the CEO's assistant probably wasn't wise. "What's the address?" She rattled off a location in Rosewood Heights, a neighborhood Daniel had driven through exactly once, gawking at houses that looked like museums. He grabbed a pen from the junk drawer and scrawled it on the back of a grocery receipt. "Thank you, Mr. Cross." The relief in her voice was palpable. "Just please hurry, and call me as soon as you know anything." The line went dead. Daniel stood in his small living room staring at the address. The whole thing felt surreal, like he'd somehow stepped into someone else's life, a life where midnight missions and billionaire welfare checks made sense. He wasn't that guy. He was the guy who clocked in, kept his head down, and made sure his daughter had clean clothes and a packed lunch. But the worry in Jennifer Caldwell's voice had been real. He checked on Emma one more time, still sleeping, still peaceful, then texted his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd helped him through 1,000 small emergencies since his ex-wife left. Emergency at work. Can you listen for Emma? Doors unlocked. Should be back in an hour. Her response came in 30 seconds. Go. I'm coming over now. Daniel grabbed his keys, his phone, and the worn jacket hanging by the door. He was halfway to his truck when Mrs. Chen appeared on her porch, already wearing her robe and slippers. She waved him on with the kind of understanding that came from raising 4 kids alone after her husband passed. Go, she called softly. She's safe with me. The drive to Rosewood Heights took 22 minutes at midnight speeds. Daniel's truck, a 12-year-old Ford with 180,000 miles and a temperamental heater, felt increasingly out of place as the neighborhood shifted. Streetlights became ornate lampposts. Chain-link fences gave way to stone walls and iron gates. Houses expanded into estates. The address led him to a property that made his breath catch. It wasn't the biggest on the street. This wasn't about showboating wealth, but it possessed something more unsettling. Perfect symmetry. Immaculate landscaping even in late winter. Windows that reflected moonlight like dark mirrors. A circular driveway with a fountain at its center, currently silent and still. And on the front steps, barely visible in the glow of exterior lighting, sat Victoria Hale. Daniel almost didn't recognize her. He'd seen her photographs, of course. The official portraits that hung in the headquarters lobby showed a woman of remarkable composure, dark hair always perfect, posture always commanding, eyes that seemed to calculate your net worth before you finish saying hello. Power suits, confident smiles, the kind of presence that made you stand straighter without realizing it. The woman on the steps wore none of that armor. She sat with her knees pulled up, arms wrapped around herself, wearing what looked like expensive athletic wear, leggings and a thin long-sleeve shirt completely inadequate for March temperatures. No coat, no shoes, just socks. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, uncombed. Her face was turned away from the driveway, staring at something in the darkness beyond the house. Daniel killed the engine, but didn't immediately get out. Something about the scene felt intensely private, like he was intruding on a moment never meant for witnesses. But he'd driven all this way, and Jennifer Caldwell's concern echoed in his mind. He opened the truck door carefully, the sound sharp in the quiet night. Victoria didn't look up. Miss Hale? Daniel approached slowly, the way you might approach someone standing too close to a ledge. I'm Daniel Cross. From facilities, your assistant asked me to check on you. Nothing. No acknowledgement. She might as well have been carved from stone. He stopped about 10 feet away, suddenly acutely aware of how little he knew about situations like this. His training consisted of fixing leaky faucets and replacing fluorescent tubes, not crisis intervention with billionaire CEOs. What did you say? What did you do? Ms. Hale, everyone's been trying to reach you. They're worried. This time she moved, just barely, a slight turn of her head, not quite looking at him, but acknowledging his existence. Tell them I'm fine. Her voice was quiet, controlled. The same voice that delivered quarterly earnings reports, that commanded shareholder meetings. But underneath it, Daniel heard something else. Fracture lines. Tell them I'm perfectly fine and they can all go to hell. Daniel blinked. Definitely not the response he'd expected. Okay. He took a cautious step forward. But you're sitting on your front steps in 30-degree weather without a coat. That doesn't really look fine. I didn't realize the facilities manager was also qualified to assess my well-being. The words had bite, but no real heat behind them. Defense mechanism, Daniel recognized. He'd heard enough of them coming out of his own mouth over the past 3 years. I'm not, he admitted, but I am qualified to know when someone's going to get hypothermia, and you're heading that direction fast. Finally, she looked at him. Really looked. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face void of makeup, and something in her expression made Daniel's chest tighten with recognition. He'd seen that look before. In his own mirror, the morning after his wife packed her bags and informed him she'd never wanted to be a mother, never wanted the life they'd built, and was done pretending. This was the face of someone whose entire world had collapsed between sunrise and sunset. Mr. Cross, she said his name slowly, as if testing each syllable. Do you know why I'm out here instead of inside my 6,000 square foot house? No, ma'am. Because every room in that house contained something he touched. His coffee mug in the kitchen, his books in the study, his side of the bed, his fucking golf clubs in the garage. Her voice stayed level, but her knuckles whitened as her grip on her own arms tightened. The entire building is contaminated with 15 years of marriage that ended at breakfast this morning, when my husband informed me, over organic yogurt and imported granola, that he's in love with his Pilates instructor and would be moving to her apartment today. The words landed in the space between them like physical objects. Jesus, Daniel breathed before he could stop himself. Quite. She looked away again. So forgive me if I'm not currently maintaining corporate standards of behavior. I seem to have misplaced my ability to give a damn. Daniel stood there, his phone heavy in his pocket. He should call Jennifer Caldwell, should report that Victoria Hale was physically safe, if emotionally devastated. Should let the professionals, whoever handled situations like this in Billionaire world, take over. But looking at her sitting there, so utterly alone despite being surrounded by wealth and success, he couldn't make himself do it. Miss Hale. He cleared his throat. When's the last time you ate something? She laughed, sharp and bitter. Is that really your priority right now? I'm a single dad. It's always my priority. He surprised himself with the honesty. Can't fix most problems, but I can usually manage food. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but a crack in the frozen surface. Single dad? 3 years now, daughter's 7. He shrugged. So I know a thing or two about holding yourself together when everything's falling apart, and I know it's harder on an empty stomach. Victoria studied him with an intensity that made him want to fidget. He could practically see her reassessing, recalculating, seeing him as an actual person rather than the invisible man who fixed her office thermostat. I can't go back in that house tonight, she said quietly. I've tried 4 times. I make it to the door, and I just can't. Then don't. The words came out before Daniel fully thought them through. Come on, let's go somewhere else. Somewhere else? She repeated it like the concept was foreign. Mr. Cross, I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I can't just go somewhere else. Why not? You got a board meeting at midnight I don't know about? Despite everything, she almost smiled. You're being absurd. Maybe, but you're still sitting on cold steps in the middle of the night, and I'm still the guy who drove out here to make sure you're okay. Daniel extended his hand. So how about we both do something slightly absurd and get you somewhere warm? She stared at his hand for a long moment. Daniel could see the war happening behind her eyes. Control versus surrender, pride versus need, the iron will that built an empire versus the simple human desire to not be alone when your world ends. Finally, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were ice cold. I should get my phone, she said, starting to pull away. My wallet, Do you want those things? She stopped. Considered. No. Then leave them. That's insane. Probably. Daniel kept his grip gentle but steady. But you just sat out here for hours rather than go inside. I'm thinking maybe insane is what you need right now. Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, holder of 2 Ivy League degrees, featured in Forbes' Most Powerful Women 3 years running, stood up from her front steps wearing socks and no coat, and followed a facilities manager she barely knew toward a beat-up Ford truck. This is your vehicle? She stared at it like it had materialized from another dimension. This is my vehicle. Daniel opened the passenger door, which creaked ominously. Fair warning, the heater's temperamental, and there's probably goldfish crackers in the seat. She climbed in without comment, brushing aside the remnants of Emma's last snack. Daniel rounded to the driver's side, his mind racing. What the hell was he doing? Where were they even going? He'd planned to confirm she was alive and call Jennifer Caldwell. This This was not that. He started the engine. The radio came on automatically, playing whatever kid's soundtrack Emma had demanded last. He fumbled to turn it off. "Leave it," Victoria said quietly. "It's fine." So Daniel drove out of Rosewood Heights with Victoria Hale in his passenger seat and Moana playing softly between them, and tried to figure out what you did with a broken billionaire at midnight. They'd been driving for 10 minutes when she spoke again. "Why did you say yes?" "What?" "When Jennifer called, you could have said no. This isn't your job. Why did you say yes?" Daniel kept his eyes on the road, watching the city lights blur past. Because she sounded worried, and because nobody should have to go through the worst night of their life completely alone. "You don't know me." "No," he agreed. "But I know what it feels like when everything falls apart. How the walls close in. How you do anything, talk to anyone, just to not be trapped inside your own head." He glanced at her briefly. 3 years ago, my wife left. Just walked out. Told me she never wanted to be a mother, never loved the life we'd built. Said she felt like she was suffocating. "What did you do?" "Sat in my truck in a grocery store parking lot for 4 hours because I couldn't face going home to an empty house and a confused 7-year-old. The memory still hurt, but differently now. Distant. Finally, the night manager came out and asked if I was okay. Complete stranger. Minimum wage guy who had no reason to care. He bought me a coffee from the vending machine and sat with me while I figured out how to breathe again." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "That was kind of him." "Yeah." Daniel turned onto the highway, heading north without any real destination. "So when someone calls me at midnight because they're worried about another human being, I remember that night. Remember how much it mattered that someone gave a damn. Even if that human being is your boss's boss's boss?" Even then, she leaned her head against the window, watching the city give way to suburbs to empty spaces. "I had a plan for tonight. A very specific plan." Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. "What kind of plan?" "Don't worry, Mr. Cross, nothing dramatic, just I was going to take a bottle of wine from the cellar, something absurdly expensive that Richard loved, and I was going to drink it on the dock behind the house until I stopped feeling anything." She paused. "Instead, I made it to the front steps and couldn't move. Couldn't go forward, couldn't go back. Just stuck." "Sometimes stuck is the best thing you can be," Daniel said carefully. "Keeps you from making decisions you can't undo." "Is that what happened to you? You got stuck?" "For a while, yeah. Couldn't think past the next 5 minutes. Couldn't plan, couldn't process. Just had to exist and keep Emma fed and hope eventually my brain would start working again." "How long did it take?" Daniel considered this honestly. "I'll let you know when it happens." She laughed, surprising them both. It was a broken sound, but real. "Christ. We're a pair, aren't we?" "We're alive," Daniel corrected. "That counts for something." They drove in silence for a while longer. Daniel's phone had been buzzing periodically, undoubtedly Jennifer Caldwell losing her mind, but he ignored it. Whatever consequences came from this decision, he'd deal with them later. Right now, the woman in his passenger seat needed exactly what she'd asked for, even if she hadn't used the words. She needed not to be alone. "Where are we going?" Victoria asked eventually. "Honestly, I have no idea." Daniel checked the gas gauge. 3/4 full. "But I figure we keep driving until you're ready to stop." "That could be a while." "I've got time." She turned to look at him fully then, and Daniel felt the weight of her attention. "Why are you doing this?" The real reason. He thought about lying, thought about giving her an easy answer, something professional and distant. But sitting in the dark cocoon of his truck with the world reduced to headlights and highway, pretense seemed pointless. Because 3 years ago, I needed someone to see me as a person, not a problem. Not a single dad who couldn't keep his marriage together, not a guy working 2 jobs to stay above water, just a person who was hurting. He kept his eyes on the road. "You needed that tonight. So here we are." "Here we are," she echoed softly. The highway stretched ahead, empty and endless. Daniel's phone buzzed again. Emma was safe with Mrs. Chen. His responsibilities waited in the morning. But for now, in this moment, he was exactly where he needed to be. "Mr. Cross?" "Daniel. If we're doing midnight road trips, you should probably call me Daniel." "Daniel." She tested the name. Do you think there's a diner open anywhere? Something cheap and fluorescent and nothing like my life? He smiled. Yeah, I know a place. The Starlight Diner appeared off exit 42 like a beacon of normalcy. 24 hours, breakfast served all day, coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since 1985. Daniel had stopped here once at 3 a.m. after a second shift emergency repair call, too wired to go home and too hungry to wait. He parked under the neon sign, its pink glow reflecting off the truck's hood. Through the windows, they could see a handful of other refugees from normal life, a trucker hunched over eggs and hash browns, a nurse still in scrubs cradling coffee, a couple of teenagers who'd clearly just come from somewhere they weren't supposed to be. Last chance, Daniel said. We can still turn around, get you home, pretend this never happened. Victoria opened her door. If I wanted to pretend, Mr. Cross, I'd have gone inside my house. Daniel, he reminded her. Daniel. She slid out, still in just socks and athletic wear, still looking like she'd walked off the set of her own life. Let's go eat terrible diner food and embrace the absurdity. They chose a booth near the back, away from the windows. A waitress who looked like she'd been working here since the Carter administration appeared with menus and coffee without asking. Rough night, hun? She looked at Victoria with the kind of knowing sympathy that came from decades of serving the broken and desperate. You could say that, Victoria replied. Then you're in the right place. I'll give you a minute with the menus. Daniel watched Victoria study the laminated pages like they contained state secrets. He wondered when she'd last eaten at a place like this, if ever. Everything about her spoke of Michelin stars and private chefs, of meals as carefully curated as board meetings. What do you recommend? She asked. Honestly, everything's pretty mediocre, but the pancakes are aggressively okay. She smiled, a real smile this time. Aggressively okay pancakes. Sold. When the waitress returned, Victoria ordered a full stack with coffee. Daniel got eggs and toast, comfort food that wouldn't sit heavy. The waitress departed without fuss, treating them like any other late-night wanderers rather than a CEO and the man who fixed her building's toilets. Can I ask you something? Victoria wrapped both hands around her coffee mug, stealing its warmth. Do you have family besides your daughter? Parents are both gone. Dad had a heart attack 5 years back, Mom followed 6 months later. Cancer, but I think it was really just grief. Daniel stirred sugar into his coffee. No siblings, it's just me and Emma. That sounds lonely. Sometimes, he admitted, but we've built something good, the two of us. Not what I planned, but good enough. What did you plan? The usual stuff. Marriage that lasted. 2 kids, maybe 3, house with a yard, growing old together. He shrugged. Turns out my wife had different plans. Can't force someone to want a life they don't want. No, Victoria said quietly. You can't. Their food arrived in record time, steam rising from plates that had seen better days. Victoria stared at her pancakes like they were an artifact from another civilization. It's been 15 years since I ate pancakes from a diner, she said. Before Hale Industries, before the money, I used to go to places like this all the time. Richard and I, we'd find these terrible diners and rate them. It was our thing. When did you stop? When stopping seemed more important than going. She poured syrup with careful precision. Success requires sacrifice, Mr. Cross. Daniel, you give up the small things until one day you realize the small things were the whole point. Daniel thought about this while he ate, about how his life had contracted to the essentials, Emma, work, survival, and how he sometimes missed the version of himself who had time for small things, movies, friends, hobbies that weren't just about staying afloat. What did you sacrifice? He asked. Everything that made me human. She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. Time, relationships, the ability to trust anyone's motives. I built an empire and lost myself somewhere in the foundation. That's dramatic. It's true. She took a bite of pancake, chewing thoughtfully. These are terrible. I warned you. And yet somehow perfect. She took another bite. When did everything get so complicated? When did life become something you had to survive instead of something you lived? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. He'd been asking himself the same question for 3 years, ever since he'd become a single father navigating a world he'd never expected to face alone. When did getting through the day become the victory instead of the baseline? They ate in companionable silence, two people with nothing in common except this moment, this night, this shared understanding that sometimes you just needed to sit in a shitty diner and eat mediocre pancakes while your life burned down around you. "Can I tell you something terrible?" Victoria asked suddenly. "Sure." Part of me is relieved. She stared at her plate. "My marriage ended this morning, and underneath the shock and the anger and the humiliation, there's this tiny voice saying, 'Finally.' How messed up is that?" "Pretty normal, actually." Daniel finished his eggs. "When my wife left, I was devastated. But I was also relieved I didn't have to keep pretending everything was fine. Sometimes the ending is a mercy, even when it doesn't feel like one." "Does it get better?" "Yeah, slowly, weirdly, but yeah." He met her eyes. "Not the same as before. You don't go back to who you were, but you become someone new, and eventually that person feels okay." Victoria nodded, processing this. "The board is going to lose their minds, the shareholders, the media." She laughed bitterly. "I can see the headlines now. Billionaire CEO can't keep her own house in order." "Screw the headlines. Easy to say." "No, I mean it." Daniel leaned forward. "You're a person before you're a CEO. A person who just got blindsided by someone who promised forever. The board and the shareholders and the media can wait until you're ready to deal with them." "I've never not been ready." "Then maybe it's time to try something new." She studied him with that same intense focus from earlier. "You're not what I expected, Daniel Cross." "What did you expect?" "Someone deferential, nervous, eager to please." She smiled slightly. "Someone who treats me like a title instead of a person." "Would that help right now?" "God, no." "Then you're stuck with this version." The waitress returned to refill their coffee, glancing between them with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition of two souls in the process of surviving something. "You two need anything else?" she asked. "Just the check," Victoria said, then paused. "Actually, do you have pie?" "Hun, we're a diner. We've got 6 kinds of pie." "What's the worst one?" The waitress blinked. "Excuse me?" "The pie nobody orders, the one that's been sitting there longest. I want that one." A slow smile spread across the waitress's face. "That'd be the butterscotch. Made it 3 days ago. It's a little dried out." "Perfect. 2 slices." When the waitress left, Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Questionable pie? That's your move?" "I'm embracing mediocrity tonight." Victoria's eyes held a spark he hadn't seen before, something almost playful. "If I'm going to fall apart, I might as well do it thoroughly." The pie arrived, questionable indeed, with a consistency somewhere between pudding and concrete. They ate it anyway, making faces at each other like kids trying vegetables for the first time. "This is absolutely disgusting," Victoria announced. "Worst thing I've ever eaten," Daniel agreed. They both took another bite. Somewhere around the 3rd forkful of terrible butterscotch pie, Victoria started laughing, really laughing, the kind that bent her over the table and brought tears to her eyes. Daniel found himself joining in, the absurdity of the entire night catching up with both of them. "We're eating terrible pie in a truck stop diner at 1 in the morning, Victoria gasped between laughs. "This is insane." "Completely," Daniel agreed. "But is it helping?" She wiped her eyes, her laughter fading to something softer. "Yeah, God help me, it is." They finished their coffee. Daniel paid the check despite Victoria's half-hearted protests, and they stepped back into the cold night air. The parking lot stretched empty around them, the world reduced to their small island of fluorescent light and warmth. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For this. For not treating me like I'm fragile or important, just human." "You are human," Daniel replied. "Everything else is just titles and money. Doesn't change what matters." She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself again as the cold cut through her inadequate clothing. Daniel started to shrug off his jacket, then stopped. That felt too intimate, too much like crossing a line that still existed between them despite the night's strange journey. Instead, he unlocked the truck and cranked the heat. "Where to now?" he asked as they settled back into their seats. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I don't want to go home, she said finally. Not yet. I know that's asking a lot. I know you have your daughter and your jobs, and she's safe with my neighbor. And my jobs will still be there tomorrow. Daniel backed out of the parking space. So where to? Somewhere we can see the stars. Daniel knew a place. 30 minutes later, they stood on a boat launch overlooking the reservoir. The city lights faded to nothing out here, leaving just water and sky and the kind of darkness that let you actually see the universe. Daniel had discovered this spot during one of his early morning insomnia drives, when sleep seemed impossible and motion was the only answer. They sat on the hood of his truck, the metal still warm from the engine. Above them, stars scattered like broken glass across black velvet. The water lapped gently against the shore, rhythmic and eternal. I used to come here as a kid, Victoria said unexpectedly. Before the company, before everything. My dad would bring me fishing. We'd sit for hours, not catching anything, just existing together. When did he die? 12 years ago. Heart attack, like your father. She drew her knees up. He never got to see what I built. Never knew if he'd be proud or horrified. Which do you think? Both, probably. She smiled sadly. He wanted me to have ambition, but also joy. I managed 1 out of 2. Daniel thought about his own father, about the conversations they'd never had, the advice he'd never received about single parenthood and survival and rebuilding a life from broken pieces. I think, he said carefully, that the people who loved us want us to be happy more than successful. That's optimistic. Maybe. But Emma won't remember if I made a lot of money or fixed a lot of broken things. She'll remember if I was present, if I loved her well. He glanced at Victoria. Might be true for you too. I don't have anyone to love well anymore. Not true. You've got yourself. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Loving myself, what a concept. When's the last time you were kind to yourself? Not achieving, not performing, just kind? Victoria opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. The silence stretched between them, heavy with recognition. Finally, she shook her head. I don't remember. Then maybe that's where you start. They sat there as the night deepened around them, two people who should never have been in this moment together, finding unexpected comfort in shared damage. Daniel checked his phone, 2:17 a.m. Mrs. Chen had texted, Emma's still sleeping, take your time. I should get you somewhere to sleep, Daniel said. There's a decent motel about 10 minutes from here. Nothing fancy, but clean. A motel. Victoria tested the word. When's the last time you stayed in a motel? 2 years ago. Work emergency in another city, needed somewhere cheap for a few hours of sleep. Take me there. The Riverside Inn had seen better days, but its neon vacancy sign glowed like a promise of sanctuary. Daniel parked and went inside alone, returning with 2 room keys. They had adjoining rooms, he explained. Figured you might want, I don't know, proximity without pressure? Victoria took one of the keys, staring at the plastic tag. Room 14. This is surreal. The whole night's been surreal. They found their rooms at the end of the building, facing the parking lot and the dark suggestion of the river beyond. Daniel unlocked his door first, revealing standard motel architecture. 2 double beds, a TV bolted to the dresser, art that had never been art. Not exactly the Ritz, he said. Perfect. Victoria unlocked her own door, revealing an identical space. She stood in the doorway for a moment, and Daniel saw her shoulders start to shake. Hey. He moved closer, uncertain. You okay? I was just thinking, she said, her voice breaking, that this is the first time in 15 years I'll sleep in a bed Richard didn't buy, in a room Richard didn't choose, in a life Richard didn't architect. The tears came then, silent and devastating. And I'm terrified. Isn't that stupid? I'm terrified of sleeping in a $40 motel room because it means this is real. He's really gone. The life I built is really over. Daniel didn't think. He just acted, pulling her into a hug that felt both presumptuous and necessary. She stiffened for a moment, probably hadn't been genuinely hugged by anyone below her tax bracket in years, then collapsed against him, her tears soaking into his shoulder as everything she'd been holding back finally broke free. He didn't offer platitudes, didn't promise it would be okay, just held her while she shattered, providing the only thing he had to give: presence, steadiness, the proof that she wasn't alone in the wreckage. When the storm finally passed, she pulled back, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be. I got your shirt wet." "I have another shirt." She laughed wetly. "You're very practical, Daniel Cross." "Comes with the territory." He stepped back, giving her space. "Try to sleep. If you need anything, I'm right next door. Just knock." She nodded, looking small and lost in the doorway of a cheap motel room, all her power and prestige stripped away to reveal the frightened human underneath. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Please don't leave me alone tonight." The request hung in the air between them. Not an advance, not a proposition, just the desperate plea of someone who'd spent too many hours already drowning in isolation. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. "Get some sleep. I'll be here." She disappeared into her room. Daniel entered his own, leaving both doors slightly ajar, close enough to hear if she needed him, distant enough to maintain propriety. He sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing his jacket, and finally pulled out his phone. 17 missed calls, 34 texts, most from Jennifer Caldwell, progressing from worried to panicked to furious. A few from HR, one from his supervisor asking why the hell he wasn't answering his phone. He typed a single text to Jennifer: "She's safe, she's sleeping, everything else can wait until morning." The response came in seconds. "Where are you?" Daniel turned off his phone. He lay back on the questionable comforter, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and tried to process the night. In the span of a few hours, he'd gone from reading bedtime stories to rescuing billionaires to eating terrible pie to making promises he hoped he could keep. None of it made sense. All of it felt necessary. From the next room, he heard the sound of Victoria moving around, a drawer opening, the bathroom tap running, then silence. Not the silence of sleep, but of someone sitting alone with their thoughts, trying to survive until morning. Daniel got up, moved to the connecting door, and knocked softly. "Yeah?" Her voice was thick with tears. "You okay?" A pause. "No." "Want company? Just to sit? I can bring terrible motel coffee." Another pause then, "Yeah, I'd like that." He used the coffee maker in his room, producing something that smelled more like burnt chemicals than caffeine, and carried 2 cups to the door between their rooms. Victoria opened it from her side, and they met in the threshold, not quite in either room, suspended between spaces. She'd been crying again. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy. Without makeup, without styling, without any of the armor she wore to face the world, she looked younger, vulnerable, real. They sat on the floor of her room, backs against the bed, sharing terrible coffee and the kind of silence that only happened between people who'd accidentally seen each other's raw edges. "Tell me about Emma," Victoria said eventually. So Daniel did. Told her about his daughter's obsession with dinosaurs, her fear of the dark, the way she insisted on wearing mismatched socks because matching was boring. Told her about scraped knees and parent-teacher conferences, and the peculiar joy of watching someone discover the world for the first time. "She sounds wonderful," Victoria said. "She is. Even on the hard days, especially on the hard days, she's wonderful." He smiled. "Being her dad is the only thing I've ever done that felt completely right." "I was supposed to have children," Victoria's voice went soft. "Richard and I. We talked about it constantly those first few years. But then the company took off, and there was always next year, always after this deal, always when things settled down." She laughed bitterly. "Things never settle down. That's the lie you tell yourself while you sacrifice everything that matters. It's not too late." "I'm 43. "So? People have kids at 43. "Single, divorced, running a company that will eat every minute I have." She shook her head. "I had my chance. I chose wrong." "You chose what made sense at the time. That's all anyone does." They sat with that truth while the night deepened around them. Outside, the world kept turning. Emma sleeping safely, jobs waiting, responsibilities mounting. But here, in this liminal space, time felt suspended. "Can I tell you my worst thought?" Victoria asked. Of course. I'm glad he left. The words came out in a rush. I'm destroyed and humiliated and furious. But underneath all that, I'm glad. Because I've been dying slowly in that marriage for years, and I was too much of a coward to end it myself. So he did it for me, and now I get to be the victim instead of the villain. That doesn't make you a coward, doesn't it? Staying in a loveless marriage because it looked good, because it was convenient, because leaving would require admitting I'd made a mistake? She turned to look at him. I spent 15 years building a perfect life that made me miserable. What do you call that if not cowardice? Daniel considered this. I call it human. We're all just trying to survive however we can. Sometimes that means staying too long. Sometimes it means leaving too soon. But either way, we're doing our best with what we know. You're very forgiving. I'm very aware of my own mistakes. He offered a small smile. Kind of hard to judge when you've messed up just as badly. They finished their coffee in silence. Daniel found himself studying her profile, the elegant line of her jaw, the way her hair fell across her shoulder, the exhaustion carved into every feature. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or styling, and everything to do with honesty. Dangerous thought. He pushed it away. You should try to sleep, he said gently. It's almost 3. I don't want to sleep. She set down her empty cup. When I sleep, I'll wake up, and when I wake up, all of this becomes real. The divorce, the scandal, the reconstruction of everything I've built. As long as I'm awake, I can pretend I'm just existing outside normal time. You can't hide from tomorrow forever. I know, but I can hide from it for a few more hours. Daniel understood that impulse, had felt it himself, the desperate need to suspend time, to exist in the space between catastrophe and reconstruction where nothing was required except survival. Okay, he said, then we'll stay awake. They talked through the deepest part of the night, the hours when the world felt furthest away. Victoria told him about building her company from nothing, about the sacrifices and victories and the slow erosion of everything that made her human. Daniel told her about single parenthood, about learning to braid hair and pack lunches and be both mother and father to a confused little girl. They talked about their parents, their fears, their regrets, about the people they'd been and the people they'd become and the people they wished they could be. Somewhere in those dark hours, the distance between CEO and facilities manager dissolved entirely, leaving just 2 damaged people finding unexpected kinship in their shared wreckage. As dawn started to lighten the sky beyond the curtains, Victoria's eyes finally grew heavy. She fought it, but exhaustion eventually won. Daniel? She murmured, already half asleep. Yeah? Thank you for tonight. For not leaving. For not treating me like I'm made of glass or gold. Just thank you. You're welcome. She drifted off, sitting against the bed, her head tipping sideways onto Daniel's shoulder. He sat very still, afraid to wake her, watching the sunrise paint the cheap curtains with amber light. His phone, still turned off, held 17 missed calls and a future full of consequences. Emma would wake soon, worried about where Daddy had gone. His jobs waited. The real world loomed, patient and inevitable. But for now, in this moment, Daniel Cross sat on the floor of a motel room with a sleeping billionaire using his shoulder as a pillow and tried to figure out how they'd gotten here and what happened next. The answer to the first question was simple: desperation and chance, and the peculiar alchemy of 2 people who needed exactly what the other had to give. The answer to the second question was unknowable. So Daniel sat and watched the sun rise and waited to see what the new day would bring. Daniel woke to sunlight cutting through threadbare curtains and the realization that his neck had gone completely numb. Victoria still slept against his shoulder, her breathing deep and even, her face finally peaceful after hours of barely contained devastation. He checked his watch, 6:47 a.m. He'd been sitting on this motel room floor for nearly 4 hours. Carefully, infinitely slowly, he shifted position. Victoria stirred but didn't wake, settling instead against the side of the bed. Daniel stood, his joints protesting, and moved to the window. The parking lot looked even more depressing in daylight: cracked asphalt, a dumpster overflowing with trash. His truck looking somehow more defeated than it had at midnight, His phone sat on the nightstand where he'd left it, still powered off. The real world waited inside that device. Missed calls, angry messages, consequences he couldn't begin to calculate. But turning it on meant acknowledging that this strange, suspended night had ended, and he wasn't quite ready for that. Victoria made a sound, something between a sigh and a whimper. Daniel turned to find her awake, staring at the ceiling with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd hoped the previous day might have been a nightmare. "It's real," she said quietly. "I thought maybe I'd wake up and it would all be some horrible dream, but it's real." "Yeah." Daniel sat on the edge of the other bed, giving her space. "It's real." She sat up slowly, running her hands through her hair. Without the careful styling, it fell in dark waves around her shoulders, messier and somehow more human than the severe elegance he'd seen in company photos. "What time is it?" "Almost 7. I should—" She stopped, the automatic response dying on her lips. "Should what? Go to the office? Face her empty house? Pretend everything was fine?" "I don't know what I should do." "You should eat something," Daniel said. "Beyond terrible diner pancakes. Actual food." "Is that your answer to everything? Food?" "It's a start." He stood, stretching the kinks from his spine. "There's a breakfast place about 2 miles from here. Nothing fancy, but real eggs and decent coffee. We could—" "I can't go out like this." She gestured at herself, rumpled athletic wear, no shoes, hair uncombed, yesterday's tears still visible on her face. "I look like I've been kidnapped." "You kind of were," Daniel pointed out. "By yourself, from your own front steps." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "That's one way to describe it. Look, we can get you something to wear. There's a Target that opens at 8. Grab some basics, clean up, then food. Simple." Victoria stared at him like he'd suggested they rob a bank. "I haven't been to a Target in 20 years. "Then you're overdue." Daniel grabbed his jacket from where he'd draped it over a chair. "Come on, let's embrace more mediocrity." She followed him to the truck, still sock-footed, still looking like a refugee from her own life. The morning air was crisp and clean, untouched by the emotional wreckage of the previous night. Daniel started the engine and cranked the heat, waiting for Victoria to settle before backing out. "I should call Jennifer," she said, staring at the motel receding in the side mirror. "She's probably lost her mind by now." "Probably," Daniel agreed, "but maybe let her sweat a little longer. She works for you, not the other way around." That's not how it feels most days. They drove through streets beginning to wake, commuters heading to jobs, parents dropping kids at school, the ordinary machinery of life grinding forward regardless of personal catastrophe. Daniel wondered how many of the people in the cars around them were holding themselves together by force of will, pretending normalcy while everything fell apart. The Target parking lot was nearly empty at 8 on a Wednesday morning. Daniel found a spot near the entrance and turned off the engine. "Last chance to back out," he said. We can skip this. Go straight to breakfast if you want." Victoria looked at the store entrance, the red bullseye logo, the shopping carts lined up like soldiers waiting for deployment. "No, let's do this. Let's buy cheap clothes at Target and pretend I'm a person who does normal things." The automatic doors slid open with a cheerful chime. Victoria stopped just inside, overwhelmed by the sheer normalcy of it. Bright lights, wide aisles, displays of things people actually needed rather than wanted. A young mother pushed a cart past them, toddler babbling about something urgent and incomprehensible. The smell of popcorn drifted from the snack bar. "Where do we even start?" Victoria asked. "Women's section is this way." Daniel led her through the store, past electronics and home goods and toys that made him think of Emma. "Find something comfortable. We're not trying to impress anyone." Victoria moved through the clothing racks like an anthropologist studying an alien culture. She touched fabrics tentatively, checked price tags with visible surprise, held up options with genuine uncertainty. "This is $15, she said, staring at a basic t-shirt. "That's about right for Target." "I paid $200 for the shirt I wore yesterday." "Did it make you $200 happier?" She considered this seriously. "No, not even a little bit." They gathered basics, leggings, t-shirts, a hoodie, socks, sneakers. Victoria insisted on buying Daniel a new shirt too, since hers had ruined his with tears. He tried to refuse, but she fixed him with a look that probably made board members reconsider their life choices. "Let me do this," she said quietly. "Let me do one normal thing. Buy a friend a $15 shirt." Friend. The word hung between them, strange and significant. But Daniel just nodded and picked out a plain gray t-shirt, and Victoria added it to the cart with something like triumph in her eyes. At the checkout, the teenage cashier treated them like any other customers. No recognition, no deference, just mechanical scanning and bagging. Victoria paid with a credit card she'd apparently had in her leggings pocket, and Daniel saw her hand shake slightly as she signed. "You okay?" he asked as they walked back to the truck. "I just spent $53 and felt like I accomplished something meaningful." She laughed, sharp and surprised. "That's insane, right? I've signed off on $50 million acquisitions without blinking, but buying cheap clothes at Target feels like a victory." "Maybe because it's for you instead of for the company." She stopped walking, Target bag hanging from her hand. "I don't think I've bought myself something just because I wanted it in years. Everything is strategic. What message does it send? What impression does it make? What does it cost in terms of perception and positioning?" She looked at the bag. "These are just clothes, cheap, simple, mine." They changed in the Target bathroom, Victoria in a stall, Daniel at the sink. When she emerged, she looked like a different person. The leggings and hoodie transformed her from executive to something approaching normal. The sneakers were white and pristine, untouched by the weight of expectation. "How do I look?" she asked, almost shy. "Like someone who might actually eat breakfast without calculating the networking value." "Perfect." The restaurant Daniel had promised turned out to be a local place called Maggie's Kitchen, the kind of establishment that had been serving the same menu since 1987 and saw no reason to change. They grabbed a booth in the back, and a waitress who could have been Maggie herself appeared with coffee and menus. "What's good today, hun?" she asked Victoria. Victoria blinked, clearly unused to being called hun by service staff. What do you recommend?" "Everything's good, but the corned beef hash is legendary. Made it myself this morning." "Then I'll have that." "Make it two," Daniel added. When the waitress left, Victoria wrapped both hands around her coffee mug in a gesture that was becoming familiar. "I like her. She didn't know who I was, didn't care, just recommended her hash. Welcome to being anonymous. Is it always like this? People just treating you like a person?" "Pretty much." Daniel added cream to his coffee. "Turns out most people don't care about your net worth. They care if you're kind and if you tip well." "I've forgotten how to be kind." She said it simply, factually. Not cruel, but not kind either. Just transactional. Everything costs something. Everyone wants something. You calculate value in every interaction. That sounds exhausting. "It is. God, it is." She rubbed her eyes. "Do you know what Richard said when he told me he was leaving? He said I'd become impossible to love. That living with me was like living with a corporation. Everything scheduled, everything optimized, nothing spontaneous or warm or real." The words landed heavy between them. Daniel took a moment before responding, trying to find something honest but not cruel. Was he right? Victoria flinched, but didn't look away. "Yes. Completely. I scheduled sex like board meetings, planned conversations, optimized everything including intimacy until there was nothing intimate about it." She laughed bitterly. "I destroyed my marriage with efficiency." "He destroyed it too," Daniel said firmly. "Takes two people to kill a relationship. You might have been impossible to love, but he gave up trying. That's on both of you. You're being generous." "I'm being fair." He leaned back as the waitress returned with plates piled high with corned beef hash, eggs, and toast. "My wife said similar things when she left. That I was boring, predictable, small, that she felt suffocated by our ordinary life. And she was right. I was all those things. But she also never tried to talk to me about it, never gave me a chance to change or grow or meet her halfway. She just decided I wasn't enough and left." Victoria picked up her fork, studying the food like it held answers. "How did you forgive her?" "I didn't. Not really." Daniel took a bite, the hash as good as promised. "But I forgave myself for not being what she needed. That was harder." They ate in silence for a while. the food grounding them in the present moment. Around them, the restaurant filled with morning regulars, construction workers, nurses ending night shifts, retirees with nowhere urgent to be. Normal people living normal lives, carrying their own hidden devastations. "I need to make some calls," Victoria said eventually. "The board will be in full panic mode. Jennifer probably thinks I'm dead in a ditch somewhere." "Are you ready for that?" She set down her fork. "No, but I don't think I'll ever be ready, so I might as well start." Daniel pulled out his own phone, still off, and set it on the table. "Want company while you face the firing squad?" "Would you?" "I've got my own firing squad to face." He turned on his phone, watching it boot up with a sense of impending doom. Might as well suffer together. The messages started flooding in immediately. Daniel watched the notifications pile up. Jennifer Caldwell, HR, his supervisor, Mrs. Chen checking in about Emma, more from Jennifer growing increasingly frantic. The most recent was from 2 hours ago. "If I don't hear from you by 9 a.m., I'm calling the police." It was 8:43. "Jesus," he muttered. "Bad?" "I'm probably fired." Victoria pulled out her own phone from where she'd tucked it in her hoodie pocket. She must have grabbed it from the house at some point, Daniel realized. Her screen lit up with even more chaos. Hundreds of messages, dozens of missed calls. Her expression didn't change, but Daniel saw her grip tighten. "I should call Jennifer first," she said, "before she actually does call the police." "I'll give you privacy." "No, stay." Her eyes met his, sudden and desperate. "Please, I need someone on my side while I do this." Daniel nodded, staying put as Victoria selected Jennifer's number and put the phone on speaker. It rang once before Jennifer answered, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Victoria? Oh, thank God, where the hell are you? I've had the entire executive team, the board, your lawyer, and half the security company calling me, asking where you are. Mr. Cross sent one text at 1 in the morning and then vanished. I was 30 minutes from filing a missing persons report." "I'm fine, Jennifer." Victoria's voice shifted into something Daniel recognized, the CEO tone, controlled and commanding despite everything. "I apologize for the worry. Yesterday was difficult. I needed time away." "Time away?" "Victoria, you disappeared for 18 hours. Your husband called me at midnight asking if you were with me, sounding drunk and guilty. He told me—" She stopped abruptly. "Told you what?" "That he's leaving you. That he told you yesterday morning and you didn't take it well." Jennifer's voice softened slightly. "Is it true?" "Yes." Silence on the other end, then quietly, "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. It's fine. Everything's fine." The words were automatic, practiced, completely untrue. Victoria closed her eyes. "Actually, no, nothing's fine. My marriage is over, my husband is gone, and I spent last night in a $40 motel room eating terrible pie with the facilities manager. Nothing about this is fine." Daniel heard Jennifer's sharp intake of breath. "You're with Daniel Cross?" "I am." "Victoria, I need you to think very carefully about optics here. A married CEO disappearing overnight with a male employee, soon to be divorced," Victoria interrupted, her voice hardening. "And he didn't kidnap me, Jennifer. He helped me when I needed help. There's a difference." "I know, the board is already circling. If they find out, let them circle." Victoria opened her eyes, and Daniel saw something fierce there. "Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I'll address them directly." "What are you going to tell them?" "The truth. That my personal life fell apart, and I took a night to deal with it like a human being rather than a corporate asset." "Victoria, this isn't negotiable, Jennifer. Send the meeting notice. I'll be there at 9 a.m. sharp." She paused. "And Jennifer? Thank you for caring enough to worry." "I know I don't say that enough." The call ended before Jennifer could respond. Victoria set down her phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Well," she said, "that's done. You told her the truth." "Part of it." She picked at her hash without eating. "Didn't mention sitting on my front steps for hours. Didn't mention breaking down in a parking lot or crying on your shoulder, just the sanitized version." "Still more honest than you had to be." "Maybe." She looked at him directly. "Your turn. Face your firing squad." Daniel stared at his phone, at the 17 missed calls from his supervisor. Mike Chen was a decent guy, fair but firm, and Daniel had never given him reason to worry before. Now he'd vanished overnight, ignored all contact, and potentially cost himself both jobs in one spectacularly stupid decision. He dialed. Mike answered on the first ring. "Daniel, where the hell have you been?" "I'm sorry, Mike. There was an emergency last night and I had to take care of it." "An emergency that required you to ignore your phone for 18 hours? HR has been up my ass since midnight. I've got Jennifer Caldwell from the executive office calling me, asking about you. What's going on?" Daniel glanced at Victoria, who was watching him with careful attention. "I can't really explain it right now, but I need to ask for today off. Personal emergency." "You're asking for today off after disappearing all night?" Mike's voice rose slightly. "Daniel, you're one of my most reliable guys, which is the only reason I haven't already written you up. But this is serious. I need you to be straight with me." "I know, and I will be, just not right now. I promise I'll explain everything, but I need today. Please." Silence stretched across the line. Daniel could practically hear Mike calculating policy versus trust, rules versus relationship. "Fine," Mike said finally. "You've got today, but you come see me first thing tomorrow morning and you better have one hell of an explanation." "I will. Thank you. And Daniel, whatever this is about, be careful. The executive office doesn't usually notice guys like us. When they do, it's rarely good." The call ended. Daniel set down his phone and met Victoria's eyes. "He thinks I'm in trouble because of you," he said. "Are you?" "Probably." He shrugged. "But I'd make the same choice again." Something shifted in her expression, gratitude mixed with guilt mixed with something Daniel couldn't quite name. "Why? You barely know me. Why risk your job?" Daniel thought about that night in the grocery store parking lot, about the manager who'd brought him coffee, about all the small kindnesses that had kept him alive when his world fell apart, about the simple human obligation to help someone who needed it. "Because you needed help," he said simply, "and I was there. That's enough." Victoria looked away, blinking rapidly. "I don't deserve that. Nobody deserves help. We just need it sometimes. That's how it works." They finished breakfast in contemplative silence. When the waitress brought the check, Victoria grabbed it before Daniel could reach for it. "My turn," she said. "You bought terrible pie. I buy legendary hash." Outside, the morning had turned bright and cold. The kind of day that demanded you make plans and move forward, whether you felt ready or not. They stood by Daniel's truck, neither quite willing to get in and let the momentum carry them back to their separate lives. "What happens now?" Victoria asked. "I need to check on Emma. You need to prepare for your board meeting." "That's not what I meant." She wrapped her arms around herself despite the new hoodie. "I mean, us, whatever this was." Daniel leaned against the truck, choosing his words carefully. "I think this was two people helping each other survive the worst night. No more complicated than that." "Feels more complicated." "Probably." He met her eyes. "But complicated doesn't have to be bad." She nodded slowly, processing. "I should go home, face the house, start dealing with all the things I've been avoiding." "Want company for that too?" "No." She said it gently but firmly. "I think I need to do this part alone. Start learning how to be alone again." "Okay." Daniel pulled out his keys. "But I'm driving you, not leaving you to walk home in Target sneakers." The drive to Rosewood Heights felt different in daylight, less surreal, more real. They didn't talk much, the night's exhaustion catching up with both of them. When Daniel pulled into her circular driveway, the house looked exactly as they'd left it, imposing, perfect, empty. Victoria stared at it for a long moment before unbuckling her seatbelt. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for last night, for this morning, for treating me like a person instead of a problem or an opportunity." "You are a person. I keep forgetting that." She opened the door, then paused. "Daniel, what you said about forgiving yourself, how long did that take?" "I'll let you know when I'm finished." She smiled, sad but genuine. "Honest to the end." "It's all I've got." Victoria climbed out of the truck, standing in her driveway in her Target clothes, looking small against the backdrop of her enormous house. Daniel waited until she reached the front steps, the same steps where he'd found her less than 12 hours ago, before backing out. In his rearview mirror, he saw her turn and wave. He waved back, then drove away from Rosewood Heights and back toward his real life. Mrs. Chen was sitting on his porch when he got home, her face creased with concern. Emma sat beside her, drawing with chalk on the concrete. "Daddy!" Emma jumped up and ran to him, launching herself into his arms with the faith that he would always catch her. "Hey, baby." Daniel held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and feeling the weight of his choices settle onto his shoulders. "I'm sorry I was gone." "Mrs. Chen said you had a work emergency." Emma pulled back to study his face. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." He set her down gently. "But I'm also really tired. Can we have a quiet day, just movies and coloring? Can we make popcorn?" "Absolutely." Emma ran inside, already chattering about which movie they should watch first. Daniel turned to Mrs. Chen, who was watching him with the knowing eyes of someone who'd survived her own share of catastrophes. "Everything all right?" she asked. "Honestly, I have no idea." He ran a hand through his hair. "But thank you for watching her. I know this was unexpected, strange, completely out of character for you." Mrs. Chen stood, gathering her coffee mug. "Daniel, in all the time I've known you, you've never asked for help unless it was serious. So whatever happened last night, I trust it mattered." "It did." "Then that's enough." She patted his arm as she passed. "Get some sleep. And if you need to talk, you know where I am." Inside, Daniel found Emma already settled on the couch, surrounded by her favorite stuffed animals, and waiting expectantly. He started the movie, made popcorn, and let the normalcy of it wash over him like a balm. This was his life, not midnight drives and motel rooms, not billionaire CEOs and existential conversations. Just him and Emma, building something small and good from the wreckage they'd been given. But even as he settled in beside his daughter, even as the movie played and Emma's warm weight pressed against his side, Daniel's mind kept returning to Victoria, to the way she'd looked on those steps, broken and alone, to the sound of her laugh over terrible pie, to the weight of her head on his shoulder as dawn broke over a cheap motel. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Made it inside. House still terrible, but survivable. Thank you for everything. V." Daniel stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "Proud of you. You're stronger than you think." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Maybe. Working on believing that." Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Would you want to get coffee sometime? When things settle? Just as, I don't know, friends?" Daniel's thumb hovered over the keyboard. This was where he should establish boundaries, create distance, protect both of them from the complications that seemed inevitable. Victoria Hale was his boss's boss's boss. She was going through a divorce. She was vulnerable, and he was probably catching feelings, and this whole thing was a disaster waiting to happen. He typed, "I'd like that. Thank you for not saying no. Thank you for not disappearing." The conversation ended there. Daniel set down his phone and focused on Emma, on the movie, on the ordinary magic of an ordinary day. But something had shifted in him, some possibility he hadn't considered in 3 years of simply surviving. Maybe there was more to life than just getting through it. Maybe broken people could help each other become whole. Maybe the worst night could lead to something worth having. Outside, the world kept turning. Victoria faced her empty house and started the hard work of rebuilding. Daniel held his daughter and tried to figure out what happened when you accidentally connected with someone completely wrong for you who somehow felt completely right. Neither of them had answers, but they had coffee to look forward to, and sometimes that was enough to keep moving forward. The day passed quietly. Emma fell asleep during the second movie, exhausted from worrying about Daddy. Daniel carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood in her doorway watching her sleep with the fierce protectiveness that came from knowing how fragile everything was. His phone buzzed again as he settled onto the couch. Another message from Victoria. "Board meeting tomorrow. Terrified. You'll be amazing. You're Victoria Hale." I'm not sure who that is anymore. Then maybe it's time to find out. No response for a while. Then, will you tell me how it goes? After? If you want. I want. Daniel smiled despite his exhaustion. Then I'll be here. Thank you for being here, for all of it. Get some sleep, Victoria. You too, Daniel. He did sleep eventually, his phone on the nightstand and his mind full of possibilities he didn't quite understand. Tomorrow would bring consequences and questions and the return to normal life. But tonight, he'd helped someone who needed it. He'd been kind when kindness mattered. He'd remembered that underneath all the titles and responsibilities, they were all just people trying to survive. And that, Daniel thought as he drifted off, was something worth protecting. Daniel woke at 5:30 out of habit, his body refusing to acknowledge that he'd only slept 4 hours. Emma was still asleep, her room silent except for the gentle rhythm of her breathing. He moved through his morning routine on autopilot, coffee, shower, checking his phone for messages he both wanted and dreaded. Victoria had texted at 4:47 a.m. Can't sleep, board meeting in 4 hours. Keep thinking about what to say. He typed back, tell them the truth. You're human. Humans break sometimes. 3 dots appeared immediately. She was awake, probably had been all night. What if the truth isn't enough? Then they're the wrong people to work for. Easy to say when it's not your empire on the line. Daniel poured his coffee, considering his response carefully. Is it still your empire if it costs you everything that makes you human? The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, I don't know anymore. Then maybe that's what you need to figure out today. No response. Daniel set down his phone and tried to focus on the day ahead. His meeting with Mike, explanations he didn't know how to give, consequences he couldn't predict. But his mind kept drifting to Victoria, imagining her in that empty house, preparing to face a board that would judge her for being human. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6:15, rubbing sleep from her eyes. You're up early. Couldn't sleep, baby. Because of the work emergency? Something like that. He pulled her into a hug, holding on maybe a bit too long. What do you want for breakfast? Pancakes? Pancakes it is. They fell into their routine, Emma chattering about school while Daniel cooked, the ordinary domestic rhythm that had kept him sane for 3 years. But underneath it, his phone sat on the counter like a live wire, waiting for news he couldn't control. At 8:47 a.m., another text. Going in. Wish me luck. You don't need luck. You need honesty. You've got that. I'm terrified. Be terrified and do it anyway. That's called courage or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. A pause, then, thank you for everything. Daniel dropped Emma at school and drove to the office, his stomach tight with anticipation. Mike had asked him to come in early before the official start of the day. That meant privacy for the conversation neither of them wanted to have. Mike's office was small and utilitarian, decorated with safety posters and a photograph of his wife and 2 college-age sons. He looked up when Daniel knocked, his expression unreadable. Close the door, Mike said. Sit down. Daniel obeyed, feeling like he was back in the principal's office. Mike leaned back in his chair, studying him with the careful attention of someone trying to solve a puzzle. I got 3 calls yesterday from people I've never talked to before, Mike began. Jennifer Caldwell from the executive office. Someone from HR who wouldn't identify themselves but had questions about your file. And at midnight, a text from a number I didn't recognize asking if I knew where you were and if you were reliable. Mike, I can explain. I'm not done. Mike held up a hand. This morning, I got an email from Ms. Caldwell thanking me for lending you for an emergency situation and assuring me that any time you missed would be compensated. Compensated, Daniel. The executive office doesn't compensate facilities managers for missed shifts. Daniel stayed quiet, unsure where this was heading. So, I'm going to ask you one question, and I need you to be straight with me. Mike leaned forward. Are you in trouble? No. At least I don't think so. Did you do something wrong? I helped someone who needed help. Victoria Hale? The name hung in the air between them. Daniel hadn't confirmed it, hadn't said anything specific, but Mike was too smart to need confirmation. I can't talk about it, Daniel said carefully. But yes, I helped someone, and I'd do it again. Mike exhaled slowly. Daniel, you're one of my best workers. Reliable, competent, never complain. But you've also got a daughter to support and 2 jobs to maintain. Whatever this is, whatever happened, you need to think about the consequences. I have been. And? And some things matter more than job security. Mike stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head with something like resignation. You're either the most principled guy I know or the biggest idiot. Possibly both. Probably both. Take the rest of the week off. Paid. Mike held up his hand before Daniel could protest. That's not a suggestion. The executive office is covering it, and honestly, I think you need some distance from whatever this situation is. Come back Monday with your head clear. Mike, we're done here. Go home. Be with your daughter. Figure out what you're doing. Daniel stood, understanding dismissal, when he heard it, but at the door he turned back. Thank you for not firing me. Don't make me regret it. Outside, Daniel sat in his truck and tried to process what had just happened. Paid time off, executive office interference. The whole thing felt surreal, like he'd stumbled into someone else's life and couldn't find his way back. His phone rang. Unknown number, but he answered anyway. Mr. Cross, this is Jennifer Caldwell. Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Ms. Caldwell? I wanted to thank you personally for your assistance the other night. Ms. Hale has informed me that you acted with the utmost professionalism and discretion during a difficult situation. I just helped someone who needed help. Nevertheless, Hale Industries appreciates your service. You'll find a bonus in your next paycheck as a token of our gratitude. That's not necessary. Ms. Hale insisted. Jennifer's tone softened slightly. She also wanted me to tell you that the board meeting went well. Better than expected. Relief flooded through him. She's okay? She's remarkable, as always. But I think you know that. A pause. Mr. Cross, I've worked for Victoria Hale for 8 years. I've never seen her vulnerable, never seen her reach out to anyone the way she reached out to you. Whatever you did for her that night, it mattered. Thank you. The call ended before Daniel could respond. He sat in the parking lot, phone in hand, trying to reconcile the controlled CEO he'd known from a distance with the broken woman who'd cried on his shoulder over terrible pie. A text appeared. Victoria. Survived, told them I'm taking a leave of absence. 2 months to sort out personal matters. They weren't happy, but they agreed. Daniel typed back, How do you feel? Terrified, free, confused, all of it at once. That sounds healthy. Does it? I just walked away from my company for 2 months. Nothing about that feels healthy. Or maybe it's the healthiest thing you've ever done. The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, are you free today? I know it's sudden and you have Emma and your jobs, but I'm sitting in this empty house and I can't breathe and I just need, yes. Yes? I'm free. Where do you want to meet? Another long pause. Could you come here? I know that's asking a lot, but I need to be in this house, need to face it, and I can't do it alone yet. Daniel checked his watch. 9:40. Emma didn't get out of school until 3. He had time. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The drive to Rosewood Heights felt familiar now, like he'd traveled this route 100 times instead of twice. Victoria was waiting on the front steps again, but this time she was dressed in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, looking more put together than she had 2 nights ago, but still fragile around the edges. She stood when he pulled up, offering a tentative smile. You came. Said I would. I know, but I thought maybe you'd reconsider, realize how crazy this all is. Daniel climbed out of the truck, taking in the house in daylight. It was even more impressive than he'd realized. Modern architecture mixed with classical elements, gardens that probably required a full-time staff, the kind of place that belonged in magazines. It's a beautiful house, he said. It's a museum. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself. Come on, let me show you the place where my marriage died. Inside was exactly as sterile as Daniel had imagined. High ceilings, expensive art, furniture that looked uncomfortable and decorative in equal measure. Everything perfectly placed, nothing personal except for the gaps where things had been removed. Lighter squares on the walls where paintings had hung. Empty shelves. A general sense of subtraction. He took his things yesterday, Victoria said, reading his expression. Came while I was at the board meeting. Very efficient, very thorough. Didn't leave a note. I'm sorry. Don't be. At least it's done. She led him through rooms that all looked the same. Beautiful, cold, unlived in. This is the kitchen where he told me. We were sitting right there. She pointed to a breakfast bar with 2 stools. Organic yogurt and imported granola. I remember thinking how absurd it was that he was ending our marriage while discussing the merits of probiotics. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he just listened. He was very calm about it, very rational. Victoria's voice stayed level, but her hands trembled slightly. Explained that he'd been unhappy for years, that I'd become someone he didn't recognize, that loving me felt like a full-time job with no benefits, all very reasonable, very considered, like he'd been practicing. Probably had been. That's what makes it worse. He'd been planning this, rehearsing it while I was completely oblivious. She moved to the window, staring out at the manicured lawn. I asked him why he didn't talk to me first, try counseling, give me a chance to change. You know what he said? Daniel shook his head. He said he'd tried, for years, but I was so busy running the company, so focused on success, that I never noticed him drowning right next to me. She turned to face Daniel. And he was right. I didn't notice. I was too busy conquering the world to see that I was losing my marriage. That doesn't excuse him cheating. No, but it explains it. She moved away from the window, restless energy driving her through the space. The Pilates instructor is 28. Beautiful, spontaneous, uncomplicated. Everything I'm not. You're none of those things? I'm 43, type A, and so complicated I require a team of executives just to manage my schedule. You're also brilliant, accomplished, and strong enough to face your worst fears instead of hiding from them. Daniel leaned against the counter. Don't reduce yourself to compete with someone else's fantasy. Victoria stopped moving, something shifting in her expression. You have an annoying habit of saying exactly what I need to hear. Comes from 3 years of talking a 7-year-old through her feelings. Turns out the same principles apply to adults. Despite everything, she smiled. Am I being handled like a 7-year-old? Little bit. I should be offended. But you're not. No. She moved closer, studying him with that intense focus that made him want to fidget. Can I ask you something honest? Always. Why are you here? Really? This isn't your problem. I'm not your responsibility. You could have driven away after that first night and never looked back. But Daniel considered his answer carefully, trying to find words for something he didn't fully understand himself. 3 years ago, when my wife left, I felt like I was drowning. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't see any way forward. And people helped me. Mrs. Chen watching Emma at 3 in the morning, Mike giving me flexible hours, random strangers who showed me kindness when I needed it most. He met her eyes. You were drowning 2 nights ago. I couldn't walk away from that. Wouldn't have been able to live with myself. So this is paying it forward. Maybe. Or maybe I just recognized someone who needed what I needed 3 years ago. Somebody to see them as human instead of a problem. Victoria's eyes glistened. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Be vulnerable. Accept help. Let someone see me when I'm not in control. She gestured around the pristine kitchen. This is all I've known for 15 years. Perfect surfaces hiding perfect emptiness. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn, Daniel said gently. You've got 2 months. Use them to figure out who you are without the company, without the marriage, without all the armor. That sounds terrifying. Probably will be. Will you help me? The question hung between them, weighted with implications Daniel wasn't sure he should acknowledge. This was his boss's boss's boss. A woman going through a divorce. A complicated situation that could only get more complicated. Yes, he said anyway. Relief flooded her features. I don't deserve you. Stop measuring worth. Just be human for a while. She laughed, watery but real. Okay, being human. I can try that. She looked around the kitchen. Want some coffee? Real coffee, not terrible motel coffee? Sure. Victoria moved to an elaborate espresso machine that probably cost more than Daniel's truck. Her hand shook slightly as she worked, performing familiar motions while her world fell apart around her. "I've been thinking about what you said," she offered, focusing on the coffee. "About forgiving myself. How long it took. And? I don't know how to start. I can identify my mistakes, being too focused on work, neglecting my marriage, optimizing everything including intimacy. But knowing what I did wrong doesn't tell me how to forgive it." Daniel accepted the cup she handed him, the coffee rich and complex in a way that made the motel version seem like a crime. "You start by accepting that you're human. Humans make mistakes. That's not a flaw in your programming. It's the programming." Very philosophical for 10 in the morning. I've had a lot of time to think about this stuff. They moved to the living room, settling on a couch that looked expensive and felt uncomfortable. Victoria curled into one corner, cradling her coffee like a lifeline. "Tell me about your day," she said. "After you dropped me off yesterday, what happened?" So Daniel told her, Mrs. Chen's understanding, Emma's worry, the quiet day of movies and popcorn, his meeting with Mike, Jennifer's phone call, the surreal feeling of watching his ordinary life intersect with something extraordinary. "Your supervisor gave you the week off," Victoria said when he finished. "Paid, which never happens. Jennifer arranged that. I asked her to." Victoria set down her coffee. "I didn't want you suffering consequences for helping me. I can take care of myself." "I know, but let me do this. Let me take care of something for once instead of just taking." Daniel nodded, understanding the need to feel useful even in crisis. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence, the house settling around them with creaks and sighs. Through the windows, Daniel could see the gardens, the pool covered for winter, the tennis court that probably hadn't been used in years. Symbols of success that felt hollow without life to animate them. "What do I do with all this?" Victoria asked, following his gaze. "The house, the stuff, the life I built? I can't stay here. Every room reminds me of what I lost, but I also can't just walk away. It's my home." "Is it? Or is it just where you lived?" She considered this. "I don't know the difference anymore. A home is where you feel safe, where you can be yourself, where the walls hold good memories instead of just expensive art." Daniel gestured around the room. "Does this place do any of that?" "No, it's beautiful and impressive and completely lifeless." "Then maybe it's time to find somewhere that isn't." "You make it sound simple." "I make it sound possible. Simple and possible aren't the same thing." Victoria stood, restless again, moving to the window. "I keep waiting to feel something. Anger, sadness, relief, anything concrete. But I'm just numb. Like my emotions shut down and I can't figure out how to turn them back on." "That's shock. Your brain protecting you from too much at once." "How long does it last?" "As long as it needs to." Daniel joined her at the window. "When my wife left, I was numb for weeks, just going through motions, keeping Emma fed and safe, operating on autopilot. Then one day I was doing dishes and a glass broke and I just fell apart. Sat on the kitchen floor crying over a broken glass for 20 minutes. What happened then? Emma found me, asked why I was sad. I told her the truth, that I was sad about Mommy, about our family changing, about all of it. And she climbed into my lap and said, 'It's okay to be sad, Daddy. Sad is just love with nowhere to go.'" Daniel smiled at the memory. 7 years old, and she understood something I'd been running from for weeks. "She sounds extraordinary." "She is, smarter than me by miles." He turned to face Victoria. "Point is, the numbness ends, and when it does, you'll feel everything all at once. But that's when the real healing starts." Victoria nodded, processing this. "I'm scared of that moment." "Me too. Still am sometimes. 3 years later, and there are still days when the grief hits out of nowhere." "Does it get easier?" "Different. Not easier, but different. You learn to carry it instead of being crushed by it." She turned from the window, facing him fully. "Can I tell you something I haven't told anyone?" "Of course." "Part of me is glad this happened. Glad he left, glad it's over, glad I don't have to keep pretending." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I've been unhappy for so long that I forgot what happy felt like. And that's terrifying, that I accepted misery as normal. What kind of person does that?" A person who was too busy surviving to notice they'd stopped living. Is that what I was doing? Just surviving? Weren't you? She thought about this for a long moment. Yes. God, yes. Everything was about maintaining, optimizing, performing. Nothing was about actually living or feeling or being. She laughed bitterly. I became exactly what I feared, a corporation in human form. So become something else. Just like that? Why not? You've got 2 months, no husband, no board meetings, no expectations, just time and possibility. I don't know how to have possibility. I only know how to have plans. Daniel smiled. Then maybe that's your first lesson. Learning to exist without a plan. That sounds like hell. Probably will be. He checked his watch, 11:30. But you've got time to figure it out, and you don't have to do it alone. You keep saying that. Why? Why do you keep showing up for me? Daniel met her eyes, seeing the genuine confusion there. She really didn't understand why someone would help without an agenda, without calculation, without expecting something in return. Because you're my friend, he said simply, and friends show up. We've known each other 3 days. An intense 3 days count for more than regular time. Despite everything, she smiled. Is that a scientific fact? Emotional fact, just as valid. They spent the rest of the morning talking, about everything and nothing, about childhoods and dreams and the weird paths that led them both to this moment. Victoria showed him the rest of the house, narrating the story behind each room, each piece of furniture, each symbol of a life that no longer fit. Around 1, Daniel's stomach growled audibly. Victoria looked startled, like she'd forgotten that bodies needed fuel. I should feed you, she said. I've been keeping you here for hours without even offering food. What kind of host am I? The kind going through a divorce, you get a pass. Still, she led him back to the kitchen. I can make us something. I think there's food, probably. Maybe. Daniel opened the refrigerator and found it exactly as expected. Imported cheeses, expensive wines, organic produce arranged by color, nothing resembling an actual meal. He pulled out eggs and vegetables, locating a pan while Victoria watched with fascination. You're cooking in my kitchen. Somebody has to. You planning to live on organic yogurt forever? I hadn't thought that far ahead. Then it's good I'm here. Daniel started an omelet, moving through Victoria's high-end kitchen like it was his own cramped apartment setup. This is what friends do. They show up and make food and keep you from starving while you figure out your life. Victoria settled onto one of the breakfast bar stools, the same spot where her husband had ended their marriage, and watched him cook. Something in her expression softened, became almost peaceful. This is nice, she said quietly. What is? This. Someone in my kitchen making food. Not because they're staff or because it's a dinner party, just because. I can't remember the last time someone cooked for me without it being transactional. Welcome to friendship. It's aggressively non-transactional. He served the omelets on plates he suspected cost more than his monthly grocery budget. They ate at the breakfast bar, the scene of marriage's end becoming the site of something new. Not romance, not yet, just human connection in its simplest form. I need to pick up Emma at 3, Daniel said eventually, but I could come back tomorrow, if you want. Keep you company while you figure things out. You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. He met her eyes. Unless you'd rather work through this alone? No, God, no. Relief flooded her face. I'd like that. Tomorrow, and maybe the day after? I've got the whole week. Might as well put it to good use. Victoria's phone rang, loud and jarring in the quiet kitchen. She glanced at the screen and her whole body tensed. It's Richard. You don't have to answer. I know, but I should. Need to start dealing with reality. She stood, phone in hand. Do you mind? Take your time. I'll clean up. She answered as she walked away, her voice shifting into something controlled and distant. Daniel washed dishes and tried not to eavesdrop, but the house was quiet enough that fragments drifted back. Victoria's clipped responses, long silences, the tension radiating through every word. She returned 15 minutes later looking drained. He wants to meet. Tomorrow. Discuss division of assets. She sank back onto the stool. Very civil, very mature, like we're business partners dissolving a merger. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Part of me wants to scream at him. Part of me wants to beg him to reconsider. Part of me just wants it to be over so I can move on. All of those are valid. Are they? Because they all contradict each other. Well, emotions usually do. Daniel dried the last dish, returning it to a cabinet that probably held 30 identical plates. You don't have to have it figured out. You just have to survive the meeting. Will you come with me? The request caught Daniel off guard. To meet your husband? Ex-husband. Soon to be. She looked at him with something like desperation. I know it's asking too much. I know it's crossing all kinds of lines. But I can't face him alone. Not yet. And my lawyer will be there, but that's not the same as having someone on my side. Someone who actually cares if I survive this. Daniel thought about all the reasons to say no. The optics, the complexity, the risk of becoming too entangled in something that wasn't his problem. But then he thought about Victoria sitting on cold steps, broken and alone, asking him not to leave her. What time? He asked. 2:00, at his lawyer's office downtown. I'll be there. She exhaled shakily. Thank you. Again. I keep thanking you and it never feels like enough. Stop measuring, just accept. I'm trying. Daniel left around 2:30, needing to get Emma from school. Victoria walked him to his truck, looking small against the backdrop of her enormous house. Tomorrow, she said. 1:00 at the lawyer's office? I'll text you the address. I'll be there. She reached out suddenly, pulling him into a hug that felt both desperate and grateful. Daniel held her carefully, aware of boundaries even as they blurred. You're saving my life, she whispered against his shoulder. You know that, right? You're saving your own life. I'm just keeping you company. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Same thing. Daniel drove away, watching her in his rearview mirror until she disappeared into the house. His phone buzzed at the first red light. A text from Victoria. Thank you for today, for all the days, for being my friend when I desperately needed one. He typed back, That's what friends do. See you tomorrow. Emma was waiting outside school when he pulled up, backpack dragging on the ground, face lit with relief. Daddy, you're here! Of course I'm here. Where else would I be? I don't know. You've been weird lately. She climbed into the truck, buckling herself in with practiced efficiency. Mrs. Martinez asked if everything was okay at home. Guilt stabbed through him. He'd been so focused on Victoria's crisis that he'd neglected to consider how his strange behavior might be affecting his daughter. Everything's fine, baby. Just helping a friend who needed help. What kind of help? The kind where you just show up and be there, like when you sit with someone who's sad. Emma considered this seriously. Like when Mia's hamster died and I sat with her at recess even though I wanted to play? Exactly like that. Okay. She settled back in her seat, satisfied. Can we get ice cream? They got ice cream. They went home. They fell into their evening routine with the comfortable rhythm of long practice. But underneath it all, Daniel's mind kept drifting to tomorrow, to the meeting with Victoria's husband, to the strange territory he'd wandered into without quite meaning to. After Emma was asleep, he sat on his couch with a beer he didn't really want and tried to make sense of the past 3 days. He'd gone from invisible facilities manager to confidant of a billionaire CEO, from lonely single dad to someone's essential support system. Nothing about it made sense, and yet it all felt inexplicably right. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Can't sleep again. Dreading tomorrow. Want to talk? Just knowing you're there helps. They texted back and forth for an hour. Nothing profound, just small talk and distraction. But Daniel understood what she really needed. Proof that she wasn't alone. That someone gave a damn whether she survived tomorrow. Eventually, she wrote, I should let you sleep. Thank you for staying up with me. Anytime. I mean it. Thank you for everything. I don't know what I did to deserve you showing up in my life, but I'm grateful. Daniel stared at those words for a long time before responding. You didn't have to deserve it. You just had to need it. That's enough. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Victoria. You're going to be okay. Promise? Promise. He meant it too. Somehow, despite the mess and the complications and the uncertainty, he believed it. Victoria Hale would survive this, and he would be there to help her do it for as long as she needed. The question he couldn't answer was what happened after. When she no longer needed rescuing, when her life reconstructed itself into something new and whole, would there still be room for a facilities manager who'd stumbled into her worst moment? Daniel didn't know. But for now, tomorrow was enough to worry about. One day at a time, one crisis at a time, one moment of showing up when it mattered. He finished his beer, checked on Emma one more time, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new opportunities to either help or hurt someone who'd become important to him in ways he didn't fully understand. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, he'd done what he could. He'd shown up, been present, offered friendship when it was desperately needed. Sometimes, Daniel thought as he finally drifted off, that was the only thing that mattered. The lawyer's office occupied the 32nd floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where even the elevator ride felt expensive. Daniel stood in the lobby at 12:45, wearing the only suit he owned, bought for his father's funeral 5 years ago and pulled from the back of his closet that morning. It didn't fit quite right anymore, a little tight in the shoulders, but it was the best he had. Victoria had texted at noon, "Running late, traffic, don't leave." He'd responded, "I'll be here." She arrived at 1:03, moving through the lobby like she owned it despite the visible tension in her shoulders. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent, her hair pulled back severely, makeup flawless. The armor was back in place, but Daniel could see the cracks underneath. "You came," she said, stopping in front of him. "Said I would." "I know, but I thought maybe you'd reconsider. Realize how insane this is." "A little late for that." He offered his arm. "Ready?" She took it, her hand trembling slightly. "No, but let's do it anyway." The elevator ride was silent. Victoria stared at her reflection in the polished doors, and Daniel wondered what she saw: the powerful CEO, the abandoned wife, the woman trying to hold herself together with professional composure and sheer force of will. "He'll be surprised you're here," she said as they rose. "Richard, he won't expect me to bring anyone." "Good. Keep him off balance." "Is that strategy or spite?" "Can it be both?" Despite her anxiety, she smiled. The elevator opened onto a reception area that screamed old money and established power. Wood paneling, leather chairs, art that was probably worth more than Daniel would make in a lifetime. A receptionist looked up, her professional smile faltering slightly when she saw Daniel. He knew what she was seeing, a man clearly out of his depth, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, escorting someone who belonged in these spaces. "Ms. Hale," the receptionist said smoothly, "they're waiting in conference room A, down the hall, third door on the left." Victoria's grip on Daniel's arm tightened. He covered her hand with his own, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. The conference room was exactly what Daniel expected: massive table, expensive chairs, windows overlooking the city. 2 men in suits sat on one side. One was older, distinguished, clearly the lawyer. The other was younger, fit, handsome in a generic way that suggested personal trainers and expensive haircuts. Richard. He looked up when they entered, his expression shifting from confident to confused to something that might have been anger. "Victoria." His voice was smooth, controlled. Then his eyes landed on Daniel. "Who's this?" "This is Daniel Cross. He's here for moral support." Victoria moved to the opposite side of the table, Daniel following. "I assume that's acceptable." Richard's lawyer, a silver-haired man named Harrison, according to the nameplate, spoke up. "Ms. Hale, this is meant to be a private discussion between spouses and legal counsel." "Soon to be ex-spouses," Victoria corrected, "and Daniel stays. He's not recording, he's not interfering, he's just here. Unless you have a legal objection?" Harrison exchanged a glance with Richard, who shrugged with barely concealed irritation. "Fine, let's get this over with." Victoria's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, arrived 5 minutes later and immediately took control. Documents were spread across the table: property divisions, asset allocations, the technical dismantling of 15 years of marriage reduced to spreadsheets and legal terminology. Daniel sat quietly beside Victoria, watching the proceedings with growing disgust. This was how marriages ended in this world, not with tears and recrimination, but with lawyers negotiating who got the vacation home and who kept the art collection. Richard was smooth throughout, professional to the point of coldness. He spoke about their marriage like it was a failed business venture, discussing Victoria's shortcomings with clinical detachment. Victoria was never home, he explained to his lawyer as if she wasn't sitting right there. Her entire life was the company. I felt like a prop in someone else's life story. That's rich, Victoria said quietly, her first words in 30 minutes. Coming from someone who scheduled his affair around my business trips. Richard had the grace to look uncomfortable. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Richard. Her voice stayed level, but Daniel saw her hand shake in her lap. You spent months planning your exit while I was completely oblivious. Don't lecture me about fairness. I tried to talk to you. Multiple times, you were always too busy, always had another meeting, another crisis that was more important than us. So you gave up and found someone else. Very mature. Harrison cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the practical matters at hand. The division of assets. Keep the house, Victoria interrupted. I don't want it. Everyone turned to stare at her. Richard looked genuinely shocked. Victoria, that house is worth— I know what it's worth. I don't care. You can have it, sell it, burn it down. I don't want to set foot in it again. Patricia leaned in, whispering urgently. Victoria, that's not advisable. The house represents significant— I don't care about significant. Victoria's voice rose slightly. I care about being able to sleep at night. That house is contaminated with 15 years of slow death. I'm not taking it with me into whatever comes next. Daniel reached under the table, finding her hand and squeezing gently. She gripped back like a drowning person finding a rope. The meeting continued for another hour. Discussions of investment portfolios, retirement accounts, stock options. Victoria acquiesced to almost everything, taking only what she needed and leaving the rest. Richard seemed increasingly uncomfortable with her generosity, like he'd prepared for a fight and was left shadow boxing. The company, Harrison said, consulting his notes. Hale Industries. Obviously that stays with Ms. Hale as sole founder and CEO. I'm stepping down, Victoria said. Dead silence. Temporarily, she clarified. I've taken a leave of absence. 2 months to figure out what I actually want instead of what I think I should want. Richard laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You're walking away from your company. Victoria, that company is your entire identity. Maybe that's the problem. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. She stood, gathering her things. I'm done here. Patricia, work out the details and send me the papers to sign. I don't care about the specifics anymore. Just make it clean and make it final. Victoria. Richard stood too, reaching for her. She stepped back and Daniel moved closer without thinking, a silent wall between them. Richard's eyes narrowed, finally seeing Daniel as more than just furniture. Who are you really? What's your angle here? I'm her friend, Daniel said simply. I don't need an angle. Everyone has an angle. Not everyone lives in your world. Richard's face flushed with anger. You have no idea what you're talking about. No idea who she really is, what she's really like. She'll consume you and spit you out the moment you stop being useful. That's enough, Victoria said, her voice ice. Daniel has shown me more kindness in 4 days than you managed in 15 years. So maybe the problem wasn't me being impossible to love. Maybe it was you not knowing how. She walked out without waiting for a response. Daniel followed, leaving Richard standing there looking like he'd been slapped. They didn't speak in the elevator. Victoria stared at the descending numbers, her breathing shallow and controlled. Daniel could see her holding it together by force of will, the same way he'd held himself together after his wife left, white-knuckling through the immediate crisis, postponing the breakdown until privacy allowed it. The lobby was crowded with lunch-hour traffic. Victoria made it to the revolving door before her composure cracked. She stopped, one hand braced against the glass, breathing too fast. I can't, she gasped. I need— Daniel didn't hesitate. He guided her outside, away from the crowd, to a small plaza with benches and trees struggling to survive in concrete. She sank onto a bench, head between her knees, trying to breathe through what looked like a panic attack. In through your nose, out through your mouth, Daniel said quietly, sitting beside her. Count with me. In for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. He repeated it until her breathing steadied, until the panic receded enough for her to sit up. Her carefully applied makeup was ruined, mascara tracking down her cheeks. She looked young and lost and utterly human. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be. I fell apart in public. That's not... I don't do that." "You just did. Welcome to being human." She laughed, shaky and broken. "I told him about you, defended you. That was stupid, wasn't it? Now he thinks that there's something. Does it matter what he thinks? I don't know. Maybe. Probably." She wiped her eyes, smearing makeup further. "I just gave away a $5 million house. Patricia is going to kill me." "You gave away a prison. That's called freedom." "Is it? Because it feels like I'm burning down my entire life without knowing what comes next. Sometimes you have to burn it down to build something better." She turned to look at him, really look at him, and something in her expression made Daniel's breath catch. It wasn't gratitude or desperation or any of the emotions he'd seen over the past few days. It was something else entirely, something that felt dangerous and inevitable at the same time. "Why are you so good at this?" she asked. "At what?" "Knowing exactly what I need, being exactly what I need. It's like you can see right through me. I just remember what it felt like being where you are, needing someone to tell me it was okay to fall apart." "Did anyone tell you that?" "Eventually. Took a while to hear it, though." Victoria pulled out her phone, staring at the screen without really seeing it. "I have 17 missed calls. The board, my lawyer, Jennifer checking if I'm alive. Everyone wanting something, needing something, expecting something. What do you want?" She looked at him, then out at the city. "I want to disappear. Just for a day. Go somewhere no one knows me, where I don't have to be Victoria Hale the CEO or Victoria Hale the abandoned wife. Just Victoria, just a person." "Then let's do it." "Daniel, I'm serious. We've got the rest of the day. Emma's with Mrs. Chen until 5. You just burned down your old life in a lawyer's office. Why not embrace it?" "This is crazy." "Everything about the past 4 days has been crazy. Might as well lean into it." She stared at him for a long moment, then started laughing, really laughing, the kind that bent her double and brought fresh tears to her eyes. People walking past gave them strange looks, a woman in an expensive suit crying and laughing simultaneously, accompanied by a man in an ill-fitting funeral suit. "Okay," she said when she could breathe again. "Let's disappear." "Where?" Daniel thought about it. Somewhere unexpected, somewhere that would make Victoria Hale completely out of place, somewhere that would force her to be someone new, even if just for a few hours. "You ever been bowling?" Her expression was priceless. "Bowling? Yeah, throwing a heavy ball at pins. Very working class, very normal people activity." "I haven't been bowling since college. Maybe not even then." "Perfect. Then you're overdue." They drove to a bowling alley on the east side, the kind of place Daniel had taken Emma for birthday parties. Cosmic Lanes advertised dollar beer on Wednesdays and had been serving the neighborhood since 1982, according to the fading sign. Victoria stared at it like it was an alien spacecraft. "This is where you want to take me? Here? Unless you'd prefer the country club." "God, no." She climbed out of the truck, still wearing her power suit and heels. "But I'm extremely overdressed." "Then we'll fix that." The gift shop, a generous term for the corner with t-shirts and cheap shoes, provided essentials. Daniel bought Victoria an oversized hoodie that said "Strike Out Cancer" and a pair of bowling shoes that had seen better decades. She changed in the bathroom, emerging looking like a completely different person. "How do I look?" she asked, spreading her arms, like someone who might actually have fun. They rented a lane, and Daniel showed her how to pick a ball, how to hold it, how to aim. Victoria's first attempt sent the ball directly into the gutter. Her second hit 2 pins. By her third frame, she was starting to get the hang of it, her competitive nature overriding her initial awkwardness. "This is ridiculous," she said after her 4th gutter ball. "How is this supposed to be relaxing?" "It's not. It's supposed to be distracting." "Mission accomplished." She tried again, this time knocking down 7 pins. "Oh, did you see that?" I saw. Nice. They played 2 games. Daniel won both, but Victoria improved steadily, her focus shifting from the disaster of the morning to the simple challenge in front of her. Around them, the alley hummed with ordinary life. Families with young kids, teenagers on dates, retirees in leagues taking it very seriously. "No one knows who I am here," Victoria said during a break, sipping the terrible beer Daniel had bought. "They're not staring, not whispering, not calculating what they can get from me. I'm just another person bowling badly on a Wednesday afternoon. How does it feel?" "Wonderful, terrifying, like I could just disappear into this life and nobody would notice or care." "They'd notice. Jennifer would hunt you down within hours." She laughed. "True. But for now, right now, I'm just Victoria. Not Victoria Hale, the CEO. Not Victoria whose husband left her for a younger woman. Just Victoria who can't bowl worth a damn." Progress? They finished their games and returned their shoes. Victoria insisted on keeping the hoodie, pulling it on over her expensive suit like a shield against her own life. "Where to now?" she asked as they stepped back into the afternoon sunlight. Daniel checked his watch. 3:30. Still time before he needed to get Emma. "There's a park near here. Nothing fancy, just swings and trees and normal people doing normal things. Want to see it? Lead the way." Riverside Park lived up to its name, a strip of green along the water with playground equipment and walking paths. They found a bench overlooking the river, watching joggers and dog walkers pass by. "Tell me about your marriage," Daniel said after a while. "The good parts, before it all went wrong." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "The beginning was magic. Richard was ambitious but not ruthless. He believed in me when I was just starting the company, when it was nothing but an idea and a loan from my father. We'd work together late at night, planning, dreaming. He'd make me laugh when I got too serious. I'd push him to think bigger. We were partners. What changed? Success changed. The company grew faster than either of us expected. Suddenly, I was traveling constantly, making decisions that affected thousands of people, living in boardrooms and hotels. Richard's career stalled. He was in finance, but never quite made it to the top tier. And somewhere in there, we stopped being partners and became competitors. My success highlighted his stagnation. His resentment poisoned everything. Did you try to fix it? Not enough. Not in the right ways. She picked at the sleeve of her hoodie. I tried throwing money at it. Expensive vacations, nice gifts, the house. But he didn't need money. He needed me. My time, my attention, my genuine interest in his life. And I was too busy conquering the world to notice him drowning. That still doesn't excuse the affair. No, but I can understand it. He was lonely. I made him lonely. The Pilates instructor probably listened to him, made him feel important, gave him attention I was too busy to provide. She turned to Daniel. Does that make me a terrible person? Understanding why he cheated? Makes you honest. There's a difference. They sat in silence, watching the river flow past. A family arrived at the playground. Parents and 2 young kids who immediately claimed the swings. The mother pushed while the father took pictures, both of them laughing at something one of the kids said. "I wanted that," Victoria said quietly. "Kids, family, the whole picture. But there was always next year, always after this deal, always when things settled, and they never did." It's not too late. I'm 43 and single and about to be divorced. The fertility window closed while I was busy optimizing quarterly earnings. Adoption exists, fostering exists, lots of ways to build a family. She looked at him with surprise. You'd really do that? Adopt or foster as a single parent? If I wanted more kids, yeah. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. That's very evolved of you. That's very necessary of me. My wife left because she didn't want to be a mother. I had to figure out how to be enough for Emma on my own. You do what you have to do. Victoria's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at it and sighed. Jennifer. Again, I should probably call her back before she actually does file a missing persons report. Want privacy? No, stay, she answered on speaker. Jennifer's voice came through tight with worry. Victoria, thank God. Where are you? Patricia called me after the meeting, said you walked out, that you seemed upset. I've been trying to reach you for hours. I'm fine, Jennifer. I'm at a park. A park? What park? Why? Because I wanted to be at a park. Because I'm taking a day to be human instead of a CEO. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, are you with Mr. Cross? Victoria glanced at Daniel, something challenging in her expression. Yes, he's helping me not have a complete breakdown. Is that a problem? No, of course not. Victoria, people are talking. After the meeting, Richard's lawyer made some calls. There are already whispers about you bringing an employee to your divorce proceedings. Let them whisper. Victoria. I mean it, Jennifer. Let them talk. I don't care anymore. Her voice strengthened. I've spent 15 years caring what people think, crafting every image, controlling every narrative. I'm done. If people want to speculate about me and Daniel, they can speculate. The truth is boring anyway. He's my friend who's helping me survive the worst week of my life. End of story. Okay, Jennifer sounded uncertain. But the board wants to meet with you. They're concerned about the leave of absence, about the divorce, about optics and stability. Tell the board I'll meet with them when I'm ready. Until then, they can use the chain of command I established for exactly this purpose. They won't like that. They don't have to like it. They just have to respect it. Victoria's tone left no room for argument. Anything else? Just be careful. Please. I know you're going through something terrible, but you've built something important. Don't let it all fall apart because of one bad week. I'm not letting anything fall apart. I'm letting go of what doesn't serve me anymore. There's a difference. The call ended. Victoria set down her phone and laughed, slightly manic. Did I just tell the board to wait until I'm ready? You did. That's insane. Nobody tells the board to wait. You just did. How does it feel? She thought about it. Terrifying, liberating, like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm not sure if I'm flying or falling. Maybe both. Maybe. She checked the time. You need to get Emma soon. Yeah, in about 20 minutes. Can I meet her? The question caught Daniel completely off guard. Meet Emma? I know it's strange. I know we've only known each other a few days, but you've been so important to me these past few days, and she's so important to you. I'd like to meet her, if that's okay. Daniel thought about all the reasons to say no. Emma was sensitive, perceptive, would definitely pick up on the unusual nature of this friendship. She'd ask questions he didn't know how to answer, and bringing Victoria into his daughter's world felt like crossing a line he hadn't even known existed. But looking at Victoria's hopeful expression, her genuine desire to see this part of his life, he couldn't bring himself to refuse. Okay, he said, but we need to stop by your house first, change your clothes, fix your makeup. Emma's too young to understand why Daddy's friend looks like she's been crying. Deal. They made the stop at Victoria's house, quick in and out, Victoria emerging in jeans and a simple sweater, looking more like a person and less like a magazine cover. Daniel waited in the truck, still uncomfortable with the opulence even after multiple visits. The school pickup line was chaotic as always. Emma spotted the truck and came running, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Daddy! She climbed in, then stopped when she saw Victoria. Oh, hi. Emma, this is my friend Victoria. Victoria, this is my daughter Emma. Emma studied Victoria with the unblinking intensity children reserve for new adults in their space. You're very pretty. Thank you. So are you. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Daniel nearly choked. No, baby, just a friend. Oh. Emma settled into her seat, buckling up. Can we get ice cream? We had ice cream yesterday, Daniel reminded her. But Victoria hasn't had ice cream with us. That doesn't count as regular ice cream. Daniel looked at Victoria, who was trying very hard not to laugh. What do you think? Ice cream? I think ice cream sounds perfect. They went to Emma's favorite place, a local shop that made their own flavors and let kids sample unlimited times before deciding. Emma took this responsibility very seriously, trying 6 different options before settling on chocolate chip cookie dough. Victoria watched with fascination as Emma narrated her thought process. The mint is good, but too minty. The strawberry is too seedy. The vanilla is boring unless you add stuff. But cookie dough is always good, even without adding stuff. That's very logical, Victoria said. Daddy says I'm good at thinking things through. I bet you are. They sat at a picnic table outside, Emma between them, chattering about her day at school. Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking questions about Emma's friends and favorite subjects and the guinea pig in her classroom. "Do you have any kids?" Emma asked suddenly. "No, I don't." "Do you want kids?" "Emma," Daniel warned, "that's personal." "It's okay." Victoria set down her ice cream. "I used to want kids, but I was very busy with work, and I kept thinking I'd have time later, and now later is now, and I'm not sure if there's still time." "You're not that old," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Chen says her daughter had a baby at 45, so you probably still have time." "That's very reassuring. Plus, you could adopt or foster. Daddy says family is about love, not blood." Victoria's eyes met Daniel's over Emma's head, something warm and grateful in her expression. "Your daddy is very smart." "I know, he's the smartest daddy in the world." They finished their ice cream as the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma climbed onto the picnic table, pointing out shapes in the clouds. Victoria joined her, the two of them making up stories about cloud dragons and castles. Daniel watched them, something in his chest tightening with an emotion he couldn't quite name. This woman who'd been a stranger 5 days ago, sitting on a picnic table with his daughter, laughing at cloud stories with genuine joy. It felt natural and terrifying in equal measure. "Daddy, Victoria's really nice," Emma announced on the drive home. "Can she come over for dinner?" "Maybe sometime," Daniel said carefully. "Victoria's very busy." "Actually," Victoria said from the passenger seat, "I'd love to come to dinner if the invitation stands." Emma bounced in her seat. "Yes, we're having spaghetti. Daddy makes the best spaghetti in the world." "I'm sure he does." So Victoria came to their small apartment, saw their modest life, helped Daniel cook spaghetti in a kitchen the size of her closet. She set the table while Emma told her about every drawing on the refrigerator. She ate 3 helpings and declared it the best spaghetti she'd ever had. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Victoria her room, the dinosaur posters, the stuffed animal collection, the shelf of books they read together. Victoria oohed and awed appropriately, treating Emma's treasures with the same respect she'd give a corporate presentation. When Emma finally went to bed, Daniel and Victoria sat on his couch with cheap wine from the corner store, the television on but muted. "Thank you for today," Victoria said quietly. "For the lawyer's office, for bowling, for the park, for this, for letting me into your real life. Thank you for being good with Emma. She doesn't warm up to people easily. She's wonderful. You've done an amazing job with her." "I'm trying." Daniel took a sip of wine. "Some days are better than others." "That's all any of us can do." Victoria set down her glass, turning to face him. "Can I tell you something?" "Always. But today was the best day I've had in years, maybe decades. Despite the lawyer, despite facing Richard, despite everything falling apart, today I felt alive in a way I haven't in so long. And it's because of you. Because you keep showing me what being human actually looks like." "Victoria, I'm not finished." She took a breath. "I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss several times removed. I know I'm going through a divorce and probably not thinking clearly, but I need you to know that you matter to me. Not as an employee, not as a project, not as someone convenient, as a person, as Daniel." Daniel's heart was beating too fast. "You matter to me too." "Good." She smiled, soft and genuine. "Because I'm not sure I can do this without you. The rebuilding, the figuring out who I am, all of it. I need you in my corner. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." She leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that was becoming familiar. Daniel put his arm around her and they sat like that while terrible television played and the world outside kept turning. "I should go," Victoria said eventually. "It's late and you have Emma and I should probably sleep in my own bed instead of on your couch." "You could stay. Guest room is just Emma's room, but the couch is surprisingly comfortable." "Tempting, but I need to start facing that house alone, start reclaiming it." "Okay, but text me when you get home safe." She stood, gathering her things. At the door, she turned back. "Daniel? What you said earlier about building a family, about it being love instead of blood." "Yeah?" "I'm starting to understand what you meant." She left before he could respond, but her words lingered long after she'd gone. Daniel cleaned up the dinner dishes, checked on Emma one more time, and tried to make sense of what was happening between them. He was falling for her. That much was obvious. Had been since probably the first night, watching her break open over terrible pie. But falling for his boss's boss's boss. A woman going through a divorce, a billionaire CEO who lived in a different world entirely. That was a recipe for disaster. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Home safe. House still terrible but survivable. Thank you for today, for everything. Sleep well. He typed back, You too. Proud of you for going home. Proud of you for being you. Daniel stared at those words until his vision blurred. Then he turned off his phone, turned off the lights, and tried to sleep despite knowing that everything was changing and he had no idea how to stop it, or if he even wanted to. The next 6 days fell into a rhythm Daniel hadn't expected but found himself craving. Victoria would text in the morning, sometimes early, sometimes in the middle of the night when sleep wouldn't come, and they'd make plans. Coffee before he dropped Emma at school. Lunch at places Victoria had never been. Afternoons exploring parts of the city she'd driven past 1,000 times but never actually seen. She was learning to exist without purpose, without agenda, without the constant need to optimize every moment. And Daniel was learning what it felt like to matter to someone who had every reason to exist in a completely different orbit. On Thursday, they went to a bookstore and spent 3 hours browsing without buying anything important. Victoria picked up novels she'd always meant to read, memoirs from people who'd rebuilt their lives from nothing, self-help books she immediately put back with embarrassed laughter. I can't believe I almost bought a book called Finding Your Authentic Self, she said, holding it up like evidence of temporary insanity. Why not? Seems relevant. Because it's so aggressively cliché. Divorced woman seeks authenticity through paperback wisdom. So, clichés exist because they're true. She considered this, then grabbed the book. Fine, but if anyone asks, I'm reading it ironically. Friday brought rain, so they spent the afternoon at a museum Victoria had donated to but never actually visited. They wandered through exhibits of ancient civilizations and modern art, Victoria reading every placard with the same intensity she probably brought to quarterly reports. I forgot how much I love this, she said, standing in front of a massive abstract painting. Just looking at something beautiful without calculating its value or networking potential, just experiencing it. When did you stop doing that? Somewhere between building the company and forgetting why I built it in the first place. Saturday was harder. Victoria had to meet with Richard again, this time to sign preliminary divorce papers. Daniel offered to come, but she refused. I need to do this one alone, she said over coffee that morning. Start practicing standing on my own feet. Call me after? Promise. She did call, 3 hours later, her voice steady but tired. It's done. Well, started. 6 months until it's final, but the papers are filed. I'm officially separating from my husband. How do you feel? Like I should feel sadder than I do. Is that terrible? It's honest. Can I see you? I know it's Emma's day with you, and I don't want to intrude, but come over. We're making cookies. You can help. Victoria arrived wearing jeans and the strikeout cancer hoodie from the bowling alley, her hair in a ponytail, no makeup. Emma opened the door and immediately grabbed her hand. Victoria, Daddy said you're helping with cookies. Do you know how to crack eggs? I think I can manage that. They spent the afternoon in Daniel's small kitchen, flour dusting every surface, Emma directing operations like a tiny general. Victoria followed her instructions with endearing seriousness, measuring ingredients precisely, asking Emma's opinion on chocolate chip distribution. More chips, Emma declared. You can never have too many chocolate chips. Words to live by, Victoria agreed, dumping in another handful. Daniel watched them work together, something in his chest expanding and tightening simultaneously. This shouldn't work. A billionaire CEO and a 7-year-old making cookies in a cramped apartment kitchen. The worlds were too different, the context too strange. But somehow it did work, naturally and easily, like they'd been doing this forever. Later, after Emma was asleep and they were cleaning up the cookie-making devastation, Victoria said quietly, I could get used to this. To what? Cleaning up flour explosions? To this, normal life, making cookies for no reason, Spending time with people who don't want anything from me except my company. She wiped down the counter with methodical precision. My lawyer called today. Richard's attorney is pushing for a quick settlement. They're being generous, more than fair, actually. Almost like he feels guilty. He should feel guilty. Maybe. But his guilt is making this easier. A few more weeks and it'll all be settled. House, assets, everything divided cleanly. She set down the dish rag. And then I'll have to figure out what comes next. You've got time. Do I? My leave of absence is halfway over. In a month, I'm supposed to return to the company, pick up where I left off, pretend this was just a brief sabbatical. She turned to face him. But I don't think I can go back to who I was before. I don't want to. Then don't. It's not that simple. Why not? You're the CEO. You get to decide what the job looks like. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I have a board, shareholders, thousands of employees depending on me. I can't just reinvent the position because I had an existential crisis. You can do anything you want. That's what power actually means. She stared at him, something shifting in her expression. You really believe that, don't you? That I can just reshape my entire life because I want to? I believe you're stronger than you think. And I believe you deserve a life that makes you happy instead of just successful. What if I can't have both? Then you pick happiness. Success without happiness is just expensive misery. Victoria crossed the small kitchen, standing close enough that Daniel could smell her shampoo. Something simple and ordinary, nothing like the designer fragrances she probably used to wear. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, but it's possible. There's a difference. Daniel... She stopped, searching his face for something. What are we doing here? This thing between us, whatever it is? Where's this going? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Daniel had been avoiding thinking about it, content to exist in the undefined space between friendship and something more. But Victoria was right. They couldn't stay suspended forever. I don't know, he admitted. I know I care about you. I know these past weeks have been some of the best I've had in years. Despite everything you're going through, I know I look forward to your texts and your company and your terrible attempts at bowling. Despite her tension, she smiled. My bowling has improved. Marginally. He took a breath. But I also know this is complicated. You're my boss, several times removed. You're going through a divorce. We live in completely different worlds. Emma has to be my first priority, always. And I have no idea how any of this could actually work in real life. So we're impossible? We're complicated. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Victoria reached out, taking his hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, despite the vulnerability in her eyes. I don't have answers either. I just know that being with you feels right in a way nothing has felt right in years, maybe decades. And I'm scared that if we overthink this, we'll talk ourselves out of something that could be good. Or we rush in and hurt each other when reality catches up. That's possible too. She squeezed his hand. So what do we do? Daniel thought about all the sensible answers. Take it slow, maintain boundaries, wait until her divorce was final and her life was more stable. Protect Emma from complications she was too young to understand. All the reasonable, rational approaches that minimized risk and maximized safety. But looking at Victoria, brave, broken, rebuilding herself piece by piece, he realized he was tired of reasonable, tired of safe, tired of letting fear dictate every choice. We try, he said simply. Carefully, honestly, without promises we can't keep. We try and see what happens. Just like that? Just like that. She laughed, surprised and relieved. You make it sound simple again. Maybe it is. Maybe we're the ones making it complicated. Victoria moved closer, close enough that Daniel could feel the warmth of her, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Can I kiss you? His heart stuttered. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She did, soft and tentative, a question more than a statement. Daniel answered by pulling her closer, deepening the kiss into something that felt like possibility and promise. And the terrifying beauty of choosing something uncertain. When they broke apart, Victoria was smiling, really smiling, the kind that reached her eyes and transformed her entire face. That was... Yeah, Daniel agreed. They stood in his tiny kitchen, holding each other while the world outside continued spinning, and for the first time in a long time, both of them felt like they might actually be okay. Sunday, Victoria texted at dawn. "Can't sleep. Want to watch the sunrise?" Daniel picked her up at 5:30, Emma still sleeping safely with Mrs. Chen, who'd become accustomed to these early morning emergencies. They drove to the reservoir, the same place they'd gone that first night, and watched the sky transform from black to purple to pink to gold. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, huddled in a blanket Daniel kept in his truck, "about the company, about what I want my life to look like. And I'm not going back. Not as CEO." She said it firmly, like she'd been practicing. "I'm going to step down permanently, install my COO as CEO. She's brilliant, more than ready. I'll stay on the board, maintain ownership, but I'm done running the day-to-day operations." Daniel processed this. "That's a big decision." "It's the right decision. I built that company to prove something, to my father, to myself, to everyone who doubted me. But I proved it years ago. Now I'm just maintaining an empire that doesn't make me happy." She turned to look at him. "I want a life, Daniel, a real one, with time for people and experiences and all the things I sacrificed. I want to be present instead of constantly performing." "What will you do?" "I have no idea. Maybe consulting, helping other companies on my own terms. Maybe teaching. I've had offers from business schools. Maybe nothing for a while, just existing and figuring out who Victoria is when she's not CEO Victoria." That sounds scary. Terrifying, but also exciting in a way I haven't felt excited in years. She smiled. "You've taught me that scary and exciting can be the same thing." They watched the sunrise in silence, the water reflecting gold and pink, the world waking up around them. Daniel thought about all the impossible circumstances that had led to this moment: Victoria's husband leaving, Jennifer's midnight phone call, his decision to help a stranger on cold front steps. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Always. That first night, when you found me on the steps, why didn't you just call Jennifer back and leave? You could have confirmed I was alive and gone home. Why did you stay?" Daniel thought back to that moment, to Victoria sitting alone in the dark, wrapped in invisible armor that was cracking under the weight of her devastation. "Because you asked me not to leave you alone. And I remembered what it felt like to be alone with everything falling apart. Couldn't do that to someone else." "You saved my life that night. You know that, right?" "I think you saved your own life. I just kept you company while you did it." "Same thing." The sun cleared the horizon, flooding the world with light. Victoria leaned against Daniel's shoulder, and he put his arm around her, and they sat in his truck watching the beginning of a new day. Monday brought the first real test. Daniel had to return to work, back to his regular life of fixing broken things and staying invisible. Victoria had a meeting with her board to formally announce her decision to step down. "I'll text you after," she promised over coffee that morning. "Let you know if they try to talk me out of it." "They will." "I know, but my mind's made up." She squeezed his hand across the table. "Thank you for believing I could do this." "You could do anything. Now you're just flattering me." "I'm being honest." Work felt surreal after a week away. Daniel's coworkers asked where he'd been, if everything was okay, why the executive office had arranged paid leave for a facilities guy. He deflected with vague answers about family emergencies and personal issues, unwilling to explain the truth even if they'd believe it. Mike called him into the office at lunch. "You look different," Mike observed. "Lighter, somehow." "Had some time to think, process some stuff." "Good stuff or bad stuff?" "Both. Mostly good, though." Mike studied him carefully. "This wouldn't have anything to do with the rumors floating around about Victoria Hale, would it?" Daniel's stomach dropped. "What rumors?" "That she's stepping down as CEO. That she's been seen around town with some mystery man. That her divorce is getting finalized." Mike leaned back. "People talk, Daniel, especially when powerful people do unexpected things." "I wouldn't know anything about that." "Wouldn't you?" Mike's expression was unreadable. "I'm not judging. Hell, I'm impressed if you somehow made friends with a billionaire. Just be careful. People in that world play by different rules." "She's not like that." Everyone's like that when enough money's involved. Mike softened slightly. I'm just saying, watch yourself. You've got a daughter to protect and a life to maintain. Don't let yourself get caught up in something that could blow up in your face. Daniel wanted to argue, to defend Victoria and what they were building, but Mike had a point. The world would judge them, would assume the worst, would question every motive and decision, and Emma would be caught in the middle of it all. His phone buzzed. Victoria. It's done. Board accepted my resignation. I'm free. Then, they weren't happy. Lots of questions about timing and optics and whether I'm having a breakdown, but I stood firm. COO becomes CEO next month. I stay on the board, but nothing else. Then, I'm shaking. Can't tell if it's terror or relief. Daniel typed back. Probably both. Proud of you. Can I see you tonight? I know it's a school night and you have Emma, but I need... Come over. We'll order pizza and watch a movie. Nothing fancy, just company. Perfect. She arrived at 6 with flowers for Emma and wine for Daniel, looking exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. Emma gave her a huge hug, chattering about her day at school while pulling Victoria to see a new drawing. It's a family, Emma explained, pointing to the stick figures. That's me and Daddy and Mrs. Chen and you. Victoria stared at the drawing, something cracking in her expression. You drew me? Of course. You're part of our family now. Daniel saw the tears form in Victoria's eyes before she blinked them away. Thank you, Emma. This is the nicest thing anyone's given me in a long time. They ordered pizza and watched an animated movie Emma had seen 17 times but never got tired of. Victoria sat between them on the couch, Emma's head on one shoulder, Daniel's arm around her waist. It felt domestic and comfortable and terrifyingly real. After Emma went to bed, they stayed on the couch, the television playing quietly. Your daughter thinks I'm part of the family, Victoria said. She does. That's a lot of pressure. It is. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not cut out for this kind of life, the normal, domestic, showing up every day kind of life? Daniel turned to face her. What if you are? What if you're exactly cut out for it, and you've just never had the chance to find out? You have a lot of faith in me. Someone should. Victoria kissed him then, deeper than before, with an urgency that spoke of desire and fear and the desperate hope that this might actually work. Daniel kissed her back, letting himself believe for a moment that impossible things sometimes happened, that broken people could build something whole together. When they broke apart, Victoria was smiling through tears. I'm falling in love with you. Is that crazy? We've known each other 2 weeks. Intense 2 weeks, Daniel reminded her. Still, it's too fast, too complicated, too everything. Probably. But I can't seem to stop it. Then don't. He wiped away her tears with his thumb. I'm falling for you too. Have been since you ate terrible pie and laughed like the world wasn't ending. What do we do now? We try. We take it one day at a time. We're honest with each other and with Emma. We let this be whatever it becomes without forcing it into something it's not. No promises? Just one. We don't disappear on each other. When it gets hard, when the world judges us, when our different lives collide, we don't run. We stay and figure it out. Victoria nodded, fresh tears streaming. I can promise that. Then that's enough. The next week brought challenges they'd been avoiding. Gossip spread about Victoria's resignation and her mystery companion. A few paparazzi caught them having coffee together, sparking speculation about the nature of their relationship. The board questioned her judgment, Jennifer worried about optics, and Daniel's coworkers whispered when they thought he couldn't hear, but they kept their promise. They didn't run. Victoria met with her lawyer and finalized the divorce settlement. Richard got the house, most of the art, half the investments. She kept her company shares, her sanity, and her freedom. The whole thing was settled in record time, both parties eager to move forward. Daniel introduced Victoria properly to Mrs. Chen, who took one look at them together and smiled knowingly. You're good for him, Mrs. Chen told Victoria over tea in her living room. He's been surviving for 3 years. Now he's living again. He's good for me too, Victoria replied. Better than he knows. Emma adjusted to Victoria's increasing presence with surprising ease. She understood that Victoria was Daddy's special friend, that she'd been sad but was feeling better, that she liked spending time with them. The complicated adult parts, the power dynamics, the wealth disparity, the impossible circumstances, went right over her 7-year-old head, and Daniel was grateful for that innocence. 3 weeks after that first midnight phone call, Victoria invited Daniel and Emma to see her new apartment. She'd moved out of Rosewood Heights into a modest 2-bedroom in a normal neighborhood with sidewalks and corner stores. "It's not much," she said, showing them around the unfurnished space, "but it's mine, chosen by me, for me, to build the life I actually want." "It's perfect," Daniel said, and meant it. Emma ran through the empty rooms, her voice echoing off bare walls. "You need furniture, and pictures, and stuff that makes it feel like home." "You're absolutely right. Want to help me pick some out?" "Yes." They spent the afternoon at affordable furniture stores, not the high-end boutiques Victoria had frequented before, but normal places where normal people bought normal things. Emma helped pick out a couch, a kitchen table, a lamp shaped like a dinosaur that Victoria absolutely didn't need, but bought anyway because it made Emma laugh. "I'm building a life," Victoria said as they loaded the smaller items into Daniel's truck. "From scratch, at 43 years old. That should feel pathetic." "How does it feel?" "Like possibility." That night, after Emma was asleep, Victoria and Daniel sat in her empty apartment on her brand new couch, drinking wine from paper cups because she hadn't bought glasses yet. "I have something to tell you," Victoria said. Daniel's heart clenched. "Okay. I've been offered a teaching position at the university, business ethics and leadership. 2 classes a semester, completely on my own terms." She turned to face him. "I'm going to take it." Relief flooded through him. "That's great. It means I'll be around more. Normal hours, normal schedule. Time to be present instead of constantly busy." She took a breath. "Time to build a relationship properly, if that's what we want." "Is that what you want?" "More than anything, but I need to know what you want, really want, because this is your life too, and Emma's life, and I refuse to be the person who disrupts that." Daniel set down his wine, taking her hands in his. "I want you, in whatever form that takes. I want to see where this goes when we're not in crisis mode, when we're just 2 people building something together. I want Emma to have someone in her life who treats her like she matters. I want to wake up knowing I get to see you that day." "Even with all the complications?" "Especially with all the complications. They make it real." Victoria smiled, full and bright and genuine. "Then let's do this. Properly. Dating, building, seeing where it goes. No rushing, no pressure, just possibility." "Just possibility," Daniel agreed. They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like cheap wine and new beginnings. The weeks that followed weren't easy. The media eventually figured out who Daniel was, sparking articles about the billionaire and the facilities manager, questioning motives and intentions. The board grumbled about Victoria's choices. Daniel's supervisor asked uncomfortable questions about propriety and conflicts of interest, but they navigated it together. Victoria gave a single interview explaining that she'd stepped down to reclaim her life, that she was dating someone who made her happy, that the rest was nobody's business. Daniel transferred to a different department to avoid any appearance of impropriety. They set boundaries with the press and the gossips and the people who couldn't understand how 2 people from different worlds could possibly make it work. And slowly, steadily, they built something real. Victoria discovered she loved teaching, loved working with students who reminded her why she'd started her company in the first place. She joined Emma's school volunteer program, helping in the library once a week. She learned to cook, badly at first, then with increasing competence. She started sleeping through the night. Daniel watched her transform from the broken woman on the steps to someone whole and happy and present. She still had hard days, moments when the divorce hit her unexpectedly, or when she questioned her choices. But she didn't face them alone anymore. 6 weeks after that first midnight call, Victoria hosted dinner at her apartment. Emma helped cook, directing operations with the same confidence she'd shown making cookies. Daniel set the table, poured wine for the adults and juice for Emma, and felt something settle in his chest that might have been contentment. "This is nice," Victoria said, surveying the scene. This is what I wanted without knowing I wanted it. A home, people I love, normal Sunday dinner. You love us? Emma asked, not missing a beat. Victoria crouched down to Emma's level. I do, very much. Is that okay? Emma threw her arms around Victoria's neck. It's perfect. I love you too. Daniel watched them, his daughter and the woman who'd stumbled into their lives at the exact moment they'd all needed each other. It shouldn't work. The math was all wrong, the circumstances impossible, the world's too different. But somehow it did. After Emma went to bed, Daniel and Victoria stood in her small kitchen, washing dishes together in comfortable silence. I never thought I'd be here, Victoria said quietly. Happy in a modest apartment, washing dishes with a man I met during the worst week of my life, loving his daughter like she's my own. Regret it? Not even a little bit. She dried her hands, turning to face him. I lost everything I thought mattered and found everything I actually needed. That's very philosophical. I'm dating a philosopher facilities manager. It's rubbing off on me. Daniel laughed, pulling her close. I'm not a philosopher. No, you're just someone who sees people for who they are instead of what they can do for you. That's rarer than philosophy. I just saw someone who needed help. You saw someone worth helping. There's a difference. She kissed him softly. Thank you for that night, for not leaving me alone, for showing me what life could be instead of what I thought it had to be. Thank you for letting me help, for being brave enough to rebuild. They stood together in her small kitchen, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of Victoria's old life and built something new from the pieces. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to their small miracle. But here, in this moment, they had everything they needed. Love that started in crisis and grew into choice. A family built from broken pieces and held together by presence and care. The courage to believe that impossible things sometimes happened when you were brave enough to try. Daniel kissed Victoria again, tasting possibility and promise and the sweet uncertainty of a future they'd build together. Emma slept safely in the next room. The dishes were clean. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and complications and the ordinary chaos of blending two different lives. But tonight, they had each other. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 3 months later, Victoria stood in front of a lecture hall of graduate students, teaching her first class on ethical leadership. In the back row sat Daniel, taking time off work to support her first day. Their eyes met across the room, and she smiled. Not the practiced CEO smile, but something real and unguarded. After class, as students filed out asking questions and requesting office hours, Daniel waited. When the room finally cleared, Victoria walked to him, pulling him into a kiss that made him forget they were in a university building. How was I? She asked. Brilliant, terrifying, exactly what they needed. I was so nervous. Couldn't tell. She laughed, gathering her materials. Liar, but I appreciate it. She paused. I have something to ask you. Okay? My lease is up in 2 months, and I've been thinking your apartment is small, my apartment is small, we're spending most nights together anyway. Emma's already asked why I don't just live with you. She took a breath. What would you think about finding a place together? Something big enough for all of us, with a yard for Emma, maybe room for whatever comes next. Daniel's heart raced. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you want to build a life together. Officially. Completely. No more back and forth between apartments. No more temporary. Just us, building something permanent. He should have hesitated. Should have worried about moving too fast, about Emma's adjustment, about all the practical complications. But looking at Victoria, brave, honest, choosing possibility over fear, he couldn't find a reason to wait. Yes, he said simply. Let's find a home together. Her smile could have powered the city. Really? Really? They kissed again, longer this time, tasting the future and finding it sweet. Students passing in the hallway probably saw them and gossiped, but neither of them cared. They'd survived worse than gossip. That evening, they told Emma over pizza at their favorite place. So Victoria's going to live with us? Emma asked, processing the information with her usual seriousness. If that's okay with you, Daniel said, you're part of this decision too. Emma considered for approximately 3 seconds. Can I help pick the house? Absolutely. And can I have a dog? Victoria laughed. That's negotiable. Then I vote yes. Emma raised her juice box. To our family. Daniel and Victoria raised their glasses, toasting their daughter, because somewhere in the past 3 months, without anyone saying it officially, Emma had become theirs. Not through blood or legal papers, but through love and choice and showing up every single day. They found a house in a neighborhood between their two worlds, not Rosewood Heights, not Daniel's working class area, but something in the middle. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, a kitchen big enough for all of them to cook together. It needed work, but Daniel knew how to fix things, and Victoria was learning. On moving day, surrounded by boxes and chaos, Emma ran through the empty rooms claiming her space. Victoria and Daniel stood in what would be their bedroom, looking out at the backyard where they'd build memories. We're really doing this, Victoria said. We really are. I went from broken on the steps to this in 4 months. That's insane. That's healing. She turned to face him, eyes bright with tears. I love you. I should have said it sooner, but I was scared and unsure and trying to do this right. But I love you, completely. I love you too. Have since terrible pie, probably. She laughed, wiping her eyes. We have the worst origin story. We have the best origin story. Broken people who found each other and chose to heal together. When did you become such a romantic? When I met someone worth being romantic for. Emma's voice echoed from downstairs. Daddy! Victoria! Come see where we should put the dinosaur lamp. They went, hand in hand, to build their life together. It wouldn't be perfect. Nothing ever was. There would be challenges adjusting, complications blending their different backgrounds, moments when the past crept in and demanded attention. Victoria would have hard days when she questioned everything. Daniel would worry about being enough. Emma would struggle with change like any child, but they would face it together. That was the promise they'd made in a motel room at dawn, not to run, not to disappear, to stay and figure it out. And they would keep that promise. Because love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone worth fighting for, worth showing up for, worth choosing every single day, even when it was hard. Victoria had chosen to rebuild herself. Daniel had chosen to help her. Emma had chosen to love them both. And together, they'd chosen possibility over fear, hope over despair, the messy, beautiful chaos of building a family from broken pieces. The night they moved into the house, after Emma was asleep in her new room and boxes still crowded every surface, Victoria and Daniel stood on their back porch looking at stars. Thank you, Victoria said quietly. For what? For answering your phone at midnight, for not leaving me alone on those steps, for showing me what life could be when I'd forgotten how to live it. Thank you for letting me help, for being brave enough to change, for loving my daughter like she's yours. She is mine. You both are. They stood together under the stars, two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and built something bright from the ashes. The road ahead was uncertain, full of complications they hadn't even imagined yet. But they would walk it together, choosing each other every step of the way. Because that's what love was. Not the absence of fear or difficulty, but the choice to keep choosing despite them. And Victoria Hale, former Billionaire CEO who'd lost everything, and Daniel Cross, facilities manager who'd survived heartbreak, had learned to choose well. They had each other. They had Emma. They had a home and a future and the beautiful, terrifying freedom of possibility. It was more than enough. It was everything. And as they stood together in the darkness, holding tight to what they'd built from nothing, both of them knew with absolute certainty that they'd made the right choice. Not because it was easy, not because it made sense on paper, not because anyone else understood it, but because it was theirs. Chosen, built, defended against all the reasons it shouldn't work. And in the end, that was all that mattered. They chose each other. They chose this life. They chose love. And that choice changed everything.